brought in. This is Fremont County KCR 22-21-1624, State versus Lori Vallow. This is the time for continued voir dire examination of pools of jurors in this case. The state is here represented by Mr. Wood and Ms. Blake. The defendant is here present, represented by her attorneys, Mr. Archibald and Mr. Thomas. Is the state ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is the defense ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. As the panel's brought in, I'll note on the record we did have a couple of jurors fail to appear today after being instructed to report. We'll take that up now. That would be Juror 232, Juror 849, and Juror 880. And also a Juror 586 did not sign their juror affirmation, so they'll be questioned about that as well. The remaining jury panel should be ready to be brought in here momentarily, and then we'll begin conducting our voir dire examination of this group of jurors.
All rise. Court is now in session. Honorable Stephen Boyce, judge presiding.
Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, we are on the record on KCR 22-21-1624, State of Idaho versus Lori Vallow. This is the time for jury voir dire examination. The court notes that the prosecution is here as well as the defense and the defendant. Is the state ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is the defense ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. The court will note that this proceeding is being simulcast to 2 viewing locations, one in Ada County and another room here in the courthouse, and another in Madison County, Idaho. There's a courtroom conduct order in effect in both of those viewing locations, and that prohibits any recording of images or sounds from those locations. And the court would request that all parties in attendance there comply with that conduct order, and if there is anyone not complying with the order, then the bailiffs are instructed to confiscate any electronic device that's been found to have been in violation of the order. At this time, then, I will commence with a welcome and roll call. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for returning back this afternoon. You've been recalled as prospective jurors in the case now before us. I'll reintroduce this case briefly. My name is Stephen Boyce. I'm the District Judge of Fremont County, Idaho. Seated next to me on my right is Shannon Holstein, who is the court clerk keeping minutes of this hearing, and she'll be administering oaths. The bailiffs are here also, Deputies Ravello, Holmes, and Beish, and they are assisting in maintaining courtroom conduct and also working with the jury. Court reporter Patty Bath is here as well, taking a stenographic record of everything said in these proceedings. And my staff attorney, Courtney Stallings, is here assisting me with legal issues, and she's seated at the table over by the window to my right. Each one of you is qualified to serve as a juror of this court, and each of you have filled out a questionnaire that's now been reviewed by the attorneys in this case and by the court, and it's been determined that you would be recalled for further questioning. In this case, we are selecting 18 jurors consisting of 12 trial jurors with 6 alternates from among you. In order to ensure on the record who we have here today, I'll note that you've all received a red card with a number on it that's been randomized. I'll also indicate that your images are not being broadcast to those other locations to keep your anonymity in this proceeding, and we will only be referring to you not by name but by those card numbers that you have. The court also notes that there has been a failure to appear of 3 of the jurors here, jurors 232, 849, and 880, and those jurors will be admonished that for their failure to appear, they may be required to come back to court and could be subject to contempt pursuant to Idaho Code. At this time then, in order to clarify who is here, I would ask that the court clerk conduct a roll call, and so what we'll do is start on the front row to my left with juror 684, go down the whole front row on both sides, then to the second row, my left to right, and then the third row. So each of you, when called, please raise your red card and just say here, and then we'll indicate on the record your presence. So Madam Clerk, if you'd take the roll call, please.
Juror 684. Here. Juror 591. Here. Juror 589. Here. Juror 486. Here. I'm sorry. Juror 586. Juror 486. Juror 411. Juror 270. Here. Juror 232 Lisbeth here. Juror 157. Juror 131. Here. Juror 1672. Here. Juror 1639. Juror 1300. Here. Juror 1287. Here. Juror 1225. Here. Juror 1185. Juror 1148. Juror 1122. Here. Juror 1069. Here. Juror 955. Here. Juror 880 is spelled here. Juror 849 is spelled here. Juror 778 is here. Juror 727. Here. Juror 15
right, thank you. The roll call's been taken. Let me ask at this time of the parties, will the prosecution stipulate that this pool of jurors have been properly called, impaneled, and seated at this time?
Yes, Your Honor.
Will the defense also stipulate that this pool of jurors has been properly called, impaneled, and seated at this time?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Counsel, perhaps in a bit of a different order than I've done things with the other groups, we do have one juror that perhaps had an issue with the juror affirmation. I'm going to suggest we just take a brief sidebar with counsel with the white noise on and that particular juror to see what the issue is there, and then we'll proceed with the rest of the introduction of the case. So for juror 586, if you wouldn't mind, if you could just, actually I don't want to do that because then you'll go into the view of the cameras. So we'll take that up momentarily with you. All right, at this time, I'll introduce you to the parties in the case. To assist you in understanding and participating in the jury selection process, we'll reintroduce you to the parties and their lawyers and then briefly summarize what this case is about. When I introduce an individual, please stand and then retake your seat. The case has been brought by the state of Idaho, who I sometimes refer to as the prosecution. The state's represented by Lindsay Blake, prosecuting attorney for Fremont County, by Rob Wood, prosecuting attorney for Madison County, and by Rachel Smith, who's a specially appointed prosecutor in this case. The defendant, Lori Vallow, is here represented by her attorney, Jim Archibald, and by her attorney, John Thomas. Thank you, counsel. This case is a criminal matter, which means the defendant is charged by the state of Idaho with a violation of the law. When you were here last week to complete your questionnaires, I read to you a summary of the charges contained in the indictment. I'll now briefly revisit those charges. With regard to the defendant, the state of Idaho alleges that the defendant, Lori Vallow Daybell, committed the crimes of count 1, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and grand theft by deception, count 2, first-degree murder, count 3, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and grand theft by deception, count 4, first-degree murder, count 5, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and count 7, grand theft. The defendant has pled not guilty to all of the charges. Please remember that is simply a description of the charges. It is not evidence. Under our law and system of justice, every defendant is presumed to be innocent. This means two things. First, the state has the burden of proving the defendant guilty. The state has that burden throughout the trial. The defendant is never required to prove her innocence, nor does the defendant ever have to produce any evidence at all. Second, the state must prove the alleged crimes beyond a reasonable doubt. A reasonable doubt is not a mere possible or imaginary doubt. It is a doubt based on reason and common sense. It may arise from a careful and impartial consideration of all of the evidence, or from a lack of evidence. If after considering all of the evidence you have a reasonable doubt about the defendant's guilt, you must find the defendant not guilty. I'll next discuss your duty as jurors. The duty of the jury is to determine the facts and then apply the law set forth in the instructions I will later give you to those facts. In this way, you will decide the case. In applying the court's instructions as to the controlling law, you must follow those instructions regardless of your opinion of what the law is, or what the law should be, or what any lawyer may state the law to be. During the course of this trial, including the jury selection process, you are instructed that you are not to discuss this case among yourselves or with anyone else, including any use of email, text messaging, tweeting, blogging, electronic bulletin boards, or any other form of communication, electronic or otherwise. Do not conduct any personal investigation or look up any information from any source, including the internet. Do not form an opinion as to the merits of the case until after the case has been submitted to you for your determination. At this time, then, I will request that the clerk administer the oath to this jury panel. If you would all please stand and raise your right hand, I'll have you placed under oath.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will truthfully answer such questions as may be asked of you by the court or counsel?
All right, thank you. You can be seated. This time, I'm advised we do have the capability of just turning the cameras off momentarily so we can discuss the juror affirmation with juror number 586. So once we've done that, if you'll let me know, we'll just have you briefly come forward to see what's happening with that. Off the record. Excuse me, sorry. It's off. Okay, thank you. All right, juror 586, if you'd please just come forward. We'll go over here onto the white house. All right, the court will note we briefly, off the record, took up the juror affirmation of one particular juror, and that juror will remain here for the voir dire examination. At this time, I'll explain that process. In this part of the jury selection, you will be asked questions touching on your qualifications to serve as jurors in this particular case. And noting with those juror affirmations, the other jurors have each completed and submitted to the court juror affirmations, which will be included in the record, so counsel can be advised that other than the juror we just discussed that with, all other jurors submitted affirmations today. So this part of the case is known as the voir dire examination. Voir dire is an ancient Anglo-Norman term dating back hundreds of years to the origins of the common law. In Old French, it simply means to speak the truth. Voir dire examination is for the purpose of determining if your decision in this case would in any way be influenced by opinions which you now hold, or by some personal experience or special knowledge which you may have concerning the subject matter to be tried. The object is to obtain 12 persons who will impartially try the issues of this case upon the evidence presented in this courtroom without being influenced by any other factors. Please understand this questioning is not for the purpose of prying into your personal affairs, but only for the reason of obtaining an impartial jury. Whenever you need to answer a question, please raise that red card that you hold, and particularly if you're on the back rows, hold the card up high enough that we can see for sure who's talking. That'll help us keep the record clear. In addition, when you're answering questions, please use a verbal response such as yes or no in lieu of or shaking your head yes or no, so that our court reporter can have an accurate record of these proceedings. And finally, when you're being asked questions by the attorneys, please don't talk at the same time the attorney's talking if you can avoid that. So again, that the record will stay clear with that. Also, many of you do have some knowledge of this case, and because of that, we will be conducting individual questioning with you regarding your knowledge of the case. Because we will talk to you about that outside of the presence of your fellow jurors, please during this part of questioning while all of you are here, avoid discussing any of the specific facts or details you may know about this case, so as not to provide information to other jurors that don't already know those facts. Also, when we do that, if you have any issue or topic that you believe is highly personal or sensitive or embarrassing, we can arrange to discuss that with you outside of the public view as well, and that can be accommodated. At this time, I'll also instruct attorneys for both parties to avoid repeating any questions already asked in voir dire, but if you do have any direct follow-up questions to a juror regarding that juror's response, you can ask those. There will be challenges to the jury panel here, and if you are challenged as a juror, you may be challenged what's considered for cause, by which I mean that each side could ask that you be excused for some specific reason, or you also may be challenged by what's called a peremptory challenge, by which I mean each side can challenge a juror and ask that he or she be excused without giving any reason for the dismissal. If you are excused by either side, please do not feel offended or feel that your honesty or integrity has been questioned, because it has not. At this time, the court then will start with its voir dire. After that, the attorneys for both parties will be given an opportunity to ask their questions as well. When you're listening to the questioning, please listen to what any individual is answering as well, because you may be re-asked the same question on the same topic. So the first question I will ask for this entire group, and because we have so many of you here, instead of saying yes or no, we're not going to hear, for example, a no if 20 of you say yes at the same time. I'll ask a yes or no question, and if when you respond, I'll just have you raise your red card up so we can view to see if anybody has a different answer. So the first question I'm going to ask is relating to your jury questionnaires. You filled those out last week, and my question is, are the answers given by each of you on the juror information forms still true and accurate? If they are true and accurate, please raise your red card. Okay, if there's anything that you think needs to be changed or updated, and any questions that would be different in your questionnaire, then raise your cards. Okay, so for those of you, you think something needs to be changed within your questionnaire? All right, let's talk about that then. So, juror number 411, I believe you raised your card. What within your questionnaire do you think needs to be changed?
Can it be one of the private things that we talk?
Yes, I'll make a note and we will conduct some individual questioning with you.
Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else that thought their questionnaire needed to be changed? Juror number 589, what would be changed on it?
My availability. Originally, I said that the hours that were laid out till 3 o'clock would be fine, but I need to get my grandson earlier than that on a few days.
Okay. In just a moment, I'm going to ask specific questions about whether there's a hardship in the time frame, so we will come back to you on that comment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that thought their questionnaire needed to be changed? Juror 1185.
I lost my son a few years back, and there's a couple things on there that is kind of tough for me, and I didn't really answer those, I guess, on the questionnaire.
Okay, fair enough. I would say we will talk to you individually about that topic as well, so thank you for relaying that. And I'll get into some more specific questions as well. Is there anyone else that thought, in terms of just what you provided in your answers to the questionnaire, they should be changed? Okay, no one else responded to that. The next topic I will talk about then is regarding the time commitment for this case. If you're required to serve as a juror in this case, it would be for a period of approximately 8 weeks. And the question now is, would such a service create a serious hardship upon you or your family or your business or profession or occupation so as to prevent you from rendering service as a fair and impartial juror in this case? So if you believe that applies to you, that you would suffer an undue hardship if required to serve in this case, please raise your red card now. Okay, juror 589. If you'll give me a moment, let me review your questionnaire. Okay, you didn't indicate the concern there, and please let me know what's changed since then that you think would create an undue hardship for you.
Originally, when I filled out the questionnaire, my husband would have been able to step in and take my my role as picking my grandson up, but he has had his work has changed such that would he would not always be available. So it's not that it's every day, but there are days that I would need him to pick my grandson up, but he wouldn't be available. So it's not every day. Other than that, I don't know what to say.
Okay. I'm going to suggest that I'd like to ask some more detailed questions about the nature of the relationship and your care providing for your grandchild. I think it would probably be appropriate to do that on an individual basis with you also. So we'll make a note of that concern you have, and we'll ask you some additional questions individually.
All right, thank you.
All right. Was there anyone else that expressed some concern of a hardship? Okay, no one else here has raised their red card as to that question. I'm going to next ask you about your thoughts on the subject matter of this case. Would the subject matter of this case, which involves charges involving murder, conspiracy, and theft, make it impossible or difficult for you to fairly and objectively evaluate the evidence in this case and render a fair and impartial verdict? If you think that's true, then please raise your red card. All right, we do have one juror. Juror 1185, does that relate to the same concerns you raised previously? Okay. I appreciate you acknowledging that. We will discuss that with you on an individual basis here shortly. Maybe not that short. It'll take a while, but we'll get there. Anyone else have a response to that question I just asked? Okay, thank you. I'll next ask about a series of questions that you will think should be obvious if we really read your questionnaire as we did, but I'm required to ask these questions pursuant to Idaho law to see if there's any what's legally called implied bias in the case. So, are any of you related by blood or marriage to the defendant, Lori Vallow, or do you know her from any business or social relationship? If so, please raise your red card. All right, no jurors responded to that. Does the relationship of guardian and ward, master and servant, employer and employee, creditor and debtor, landlord and tenant, boarder or lodger exist between any of you and any of the attorneys here today? No one raised a card for that question. Are any of you a party in any civil action against the defendant, Lori Vallow? Nobody responded to that. Have any of you ever brought a criminal complaint against the defendant, Lori Vallow, or have you ever been accused by any of these prosecutors of a crime? No one responded to that. I'll next ask some questions relating to the attorneys and the attorneys they practice with. So, beginning with the state, would you please introduce yourselves, who practices in your offices, and then I'll move on to the defense. So, for the state.
Thank you. In the Madison County Prosecutor's Office, there's myself, Rob Wood, Mackenzie Cole, Spencer Rammel, Adam Garvin, and Troy Evans. And in the Fremont County Prosecutor's Office, there's Lindsay Blake, who's at counsel table with me, Tanya Rawlings, Rocky Whitsom, and Blake Hall. And both offices have deputized Rachel Smith, who was at counsel table with us.
All right, thank you. For the defense, Mr. Thomas and Mr. Archibald.
I'm a sole practitioner.
Good afternoon. My name is John Thomas. The attorneys that work in my office at the Bonneville County Public Defender's Office are Jordan Crane, Tyler Salveson, Alex Sosa, Paul Butikofer, Brad Rigby, Justin Bowles, Timothy French, and Jason Gustavus.
Okay, thank you, counsel. The attorneys called there mostly practice in eastern Idaho. So having heard those names now, do any of you in the jury panel have an attorney-client relationship with any of the attorneys mentioned? All right, no one responded to that. Are any of you related by blood or marriage to any of the lawyers we just mentioned, or do any of you know any of the lawyers from any professional, business, or social relationship? Okay, no one responded to that. I will next ask you to raise your red card if you've previously served on a jury. And by serving on a jury, I mean a jury that you weren't just called for jury service, but you sat on a jury that went through trial. So if you've served on a jury before, please raise your red card. Okay, we have 3 jurors on that side of the room, so we'll wait until a microphone's passed to you so we can pick up what you're saying. The first juror that raised their card was, what was your number again? 1069. Let me ask you a few questions about that jury service. When was it that you were on a jury?
I think it was about 5 years ago.
Okay, and one time you've done this?
Mm-hmm.
And where was that?
Here in Ada County.
Was it a criminal or civil case?
Criminal.
All right, was there anything about your service on that jury 5 years ago that you think in any way would impact your ability to sit as a fair and impartial jury in this case?
No.
Okay, thank you for your response. Who else has served on a jury previously? We'll talk to one. Okay, what was your number again? 778. How many times have you previously been a juror?
Twice.
Okay, and where was that?
Ada County.
When were those trials?
My last one was like 2 or 3 years ago, and the one before that, roughly 8 to 10 years.
Do you recall if they were criminal or civil cases?
Yeah, the most recent one was criminal, and then the one before that was civil,
Okay.
I believe.
In looking back over your experience as a juror on those 2 previous trials, is there anything about your service there that you think would impact your ability to sit as an impartial juror in this case here?
No.
Okay, thanks for your response. And juror number 1478. When did you, and how many times previously been on a jury?
One time,
Where was that?
Ada County.
And how long ago?
Hard to say. I want to say 10 years ago.
Was it a criminal or civil case?
Criminal.
Was there anything about your service on that jury that you think would impact your ability to sit as a fair and impartial juror in this case?
No.
Okay, thank you for your response. I'll just confirm now, is that all the jurors that have previously been on a jury? Okay. I'll next ask some more general questions to you about this case. Have any of you ever formed or expressed an unqualified opinion that the defendant, Lori Vallow, is guilty or not guilty of the offenses charged in this case? If you have formed or expressed any unqualified opinion, please raise your red card. Okay, nobody responded affirmatively to that. Do any of you have any bias or prejudice either for or against the defendant in this case? If so, please raise your red card. No one's responded to that question. Going back to your questionnaires, there was a list of witnesses who may testify in this case. Having thought through your responses since you answered that, is there anyone here that thinks they need to add any additional information about whether or not you know any of the witnesses in this case? If so, please raise your red card. All right, no one's responded to that. Are any of you unwilling to follow my instructions to you, the jury, as to the law that you must apply in determining this case? If so, please raise your red card. No one's responded to that. Do any of you have a religious or moral position that would make it impossible for you to sit in judgment of another or to render a fair and impartial verdict? If so, please raise your red card. Nobody's responded to that. Are there any of you that, if selected as a juror in this case, would be unwilling or unable to render a fair and impartial verdict based upon the evidence presented in this courtroom and the laws instructed by this court? If so, please raise your red card. No one has responded to that. And finally, do any of you have any other reason why you cannot give this case your undivided attention and render a fair and impartial verdict? If so, you could raise your red card now. Okay, 1185, we will talk to you individually. And I'll note that. Anyone else have a response to that question? All right, at this time then, that concludes the court's portion of its voir dire. I will next let the attorneys ask you some questions, beginning with the state. Who's going to be conducting voir dire of this panel for the state?
Myself and Ms. Smith, will, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Wood, you can proceed with your questioning, and we'll just have you do so from council table today. Yes. Yes. Okay, we're back on the record. We had a brief sidebar with Juror 1185. There was a concern about hardship raised in the questionnaire. We brought the juror back for voir dire after discussing briefly that nature of the hardship with that juror. Court intends to excuse them for a hardship request. Does the state have any objection to Juror 1185 being excused?
No objection.
Does the defense have any objection?
No objection.
All right, juror number 1185, you're free to leave. I'll just tell you as you go, you're free to talk about your jury service with others if you wish. If you do so, please respect the feelings and privacy of your fellow jurors and only discuss your own personal experience. If someone insists on talking to you about your jury service and you don't want to talk to them, please report that to the court and we will follow up on that. And with that, we thank you for your service today and for coming in last week as well, and you can be excused. You can leave the cameras running, but I'm also going to have one quick sidebar again with counsel regarding another juror. Mr. Wood, what was the juror that you referenced? Okay. Mr. Wood, at this time, then you can begin your voir dire examination.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me speaking into the mic?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, my name is Rob Wood. I represent Madison County, Idaho, the people of the state of Idaho who live there. Seated next to me is Lindsay Blake, the county prosecutor for Fremont County. In case you were wondering why there's two county prosecutors here, as you heard in the indictment, there are allegations of crimes being committed in both counties, and so both counties are here handling this case. I just wanted to reiterate something the judge said. If there's anything you need to speak about privately, please let us know. We want to make sure that you feel like you can tell us what you need to tell us honestly, without any fear or uncomfort, or without being uncomfortable. So with that being said, I want to ask you about a couple words that I think apply here today. Those words are brutal honesty. Juror 591. When I say the words brutal honesty, what do you think? What comes to mind?
Brutal honesty means that you tell the truth, no matter if it's negative or positive, and how that might impact the person or the other person.
Perfect.
That's what it means to me.
Okay, thank you. 1639, same question. What does that phrase mean to you?
That means being honest, regardless of hurting feelings or how it may be perceived. It's honest as you see it and present it.
Thank you. Thank you. Those are both great answers. The one thing I'd maybe add as well is complete complete honesty. It's important that the questions you get asked today, that you answer them completely and totally. And the reason why that's so important, this is a criminal case with a defendant who's been charged with serious crimes, and she has an absolute right to a fair and impartial jury and a fair trial. And a lot of times people don't think about this, but the people of the state of Idaho, they also have a right to a fair and impartial jury and a fair trial. Does anyone here have an issue with the idea that the state also has a right to a fair trial? Not seeing anybody? Everybody's okay with that. That both sides have a right to a fair trial and a fair and impartial jury. We all agree with that, and you can just... Yes. Okay. Does anybody disagree with that? Okay. So that's why it's so important that we get brutal honesty from you today. Just really quick, an analogy I like to use. How many here have flown on an airplane? It looks like just about everyone, if not everybody. We all know how it goes. You get on, you store your luggage, and then you get your safety instructions, and the pilot comes on and says, we're going to this destination, and I'm going to get you there around this time. How would you feel if instead of saying that, the pilot said, folks, I might be able to land this plane. We'll see. Who here would feel comfortable with that? I see people laughing, but no one is raising their hand. So nobody here would feel comfortable with that, correct? So, ladies and gentlemen, today you're a pilot, and we need you to land the plane. And what that means today is giving us those answers, being complete. Following that, the judge asked you earlier if you would be willing to follow the law that he gives you. And I don't want to repeat anything from the judge, but I do want to delve into that a little bit earlier, or a little bit more. Does everyone agree that the word fair means something different to different people? And so if people are having a disagreement, what's fair to one person may not be fair to the other person. Now, is there anybody here who can think of a law, a rule at work, or some regulation that they don't like? I raise a hand. Most of us have something, some rule, some law that we don't agree with. So in this courtroom, there is going to be one set of laws given by the judge. And you've got two parties. You've got the state of Idaho and you've got the defendant. Can you see how, well, let me ask it this way. If anybody here at the end of the day feels like the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty per the law that the judge gave, but you don't like that law, is there anyone here who would not still render the guilty verdict? Nobody. Let me ask the opposite. Is there anybody here who if they didn't feel the state lived up to its burden, but they didn't like the law as given, would render a guilty verdict? Okay, so I've seen no answers on either of those. So can everyone here, by raise of hand, can everybody here commit 100% brutal honesty to follow the law as it is given, regardless of your personal feelings about the law? And does anybody disagree with that? Sometimes people do. Nobody here disagrees with that? Okay, thank you. We're going to talk about publicity individually with you. Before we do that, I do have a few questions on that, though, I want to ask. Does anyone here believe everything they read on the internet? People always laugh when I ask that. Juror 955, why do you laugh when I ask that?
My personal opinion is that it's more likely that nothing on the internet is true.
Okay, that's a bit extreme.
I mean, more likely.
Okay. Juror 1225. Can you tell us your thoughts about the reliability of what you read on the internet?
I also feel like not all of it's true. I feel like a lot of things are blown out of the picture is blown up. I'm not a big social media person, so I stay off of it as much as possible.
Okay. Juror 486. Do you feel like you can believe everything you see on TV?
No.
Even like on your local news?
No.
Okay. How come?
I personally think news is a distraction from what's actually going on. They show you what they want you to see.
Okay. Juror 370. Same question.
As far as news, it's fundamentally entertainment. It's to entertain people, not necessarily to present facts, more opinions.
Okay. So, going back to a fair trial, there's a lot of information out there about this case. Some of you will have heard about it, and again, we'll talk about what you've personally heard later. But acknowledging, it seems, and if I'm wrong, correct me, but it seems like everybody here acknowledges that everything they see online and in the news is not necessarily true. Can everybody here commit that you will put aside whatever you've read or heard or seen or talked about outside of this courtroom and judge this case solely on the evidence presented in this courtroom? Can you do that by a raise of hand? And is there anybody who feels like they can't do that? Okay. I'm just going to speak with you real quick about one more thing and then turn some time over to my colleague, Ms. Smith. As you heard today, this is a murder case. And the allegations include the murder of 2 minor children and a mother. There will be some evidence in this case that will be, I use the phrase emotionally charged, or it could be difficult to look at. Graphic, maybe that's the best word for it. There will be some graphic evidence. And in your questionnaires, you were asked about whether or not you could look at autopsy photos. Juror 1300. How do you feel about that? Are you going to be okay seeing evidence like that?
It'll be hard, but I think my training as a nurse will help with that because of what I've seen day to day at work.
So as a nurse, what kind of nurse are you?
I'm a med-surg nurse.
Okay, so you see graphic things often. Okay. So is there any reason for you to believe that seeing that type of information would overrun your common sense and reason?
No.
Okay. Juror 1478. Same question. How do you feel about that?
I think I would be fine with it. It's the same thing. I work in senior living, so I'm with people quite often when they pass, or I've held someone's hand as they were taken off of life support, and I've also had death in my family, so I'm fine. I can handle it.
Again, so that no reason to think that seeing something like that, even if it were disturbing, would overrun your common sense and reason.
Absolutely not.
Okay. Is there anybody here who feels like seeing something like that would overrun your common sense and reason? Does anybody here feel like if they saw information like that, they wouldn't be able to weigh all of the evidence in the case? Okay. All right, Your Honor, I'm done, and I'm going to turn the time over to Ms. Smith for a few minutes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wood.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me? Okay, great. I just have a few questions, none of which will repeat either the judge or Mr. Wood, but I do want to follow up with a few specific people. And as Judge Wood mentioned, given that we have a number of people in here and given that we're kind of spread out, would you please listen to the conversation I have with others? Because sometimes hearing things triggers things in our memory or in our thoughts. And so if you have a reaction, just raise your card. I'm not going to ask it every time, but that will speed things up a bit if you listen to the conversation. Sometimes jurors have a tendency to go, oh, she's not talking to me, I'm off the hook. And little do they know that's really the opposite of what we need in here. Because what we need in here is people who are just candid and honest and make sure that Ms. Vallow Daybell and the state both get a fair and impartial evaluator of the evidence. Does that make sense? Okay. And to follow up on the judge's comments, he asked everybody to, unfortunately, because we're so spread out, if you could make sure when I ask a group question and it's a yes, or, I ask a no and your answer is, positive on that question, just raise your card. And if you don't, just leave your card down and I'll try to make sure I keep my eyes out. All right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. See, not everybody raised their cards. Can we try it one more time? Does that make sense? Yes. Oh, excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's hard spread out, but the court reporter's taken down everything, and I need to be able to get her a good record because that's, again, part of the party's rights. So I'm not trying to make light of the situation, but really your answers are just too important to both sides. Okay? Yes? Excellent. Thank you. I do want to start with juror 727. Sir. Thank you. Sir, I see, without getting into specifics, I see you're related to individuals in law enforcement. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. So I have two follow-up questions to that. Let's break it down a little bit. You understand the court's instructions on this case with that the state and only the state bears the burden of proof, correct?
Correct.
You understand that burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt?
Correct.
Okay. You know that the court's instruction made it clear to us that jurors must make that decision of beyond a reasonable doubt, whether or not they're guilty, on every part of the accusation or accusations made, right?
Correct.
The charges. All right. Were you aware that you're going to get those definitions sent back with you to the jury room of what those charges mean?
I was unaware.
Okay. Well, and that sometimes can be comforting to the jury. The Judge Boyce has instructions in writing that will go back to the jury room. So people aren't left to guess, and those are based on research of the law and opinions from higher courts and from the legislature. So the jurors are going to get those definitions, instructions, back in the jury room. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And so once they're back in the jury room, the jurors, as the court explained, have a duty to follow the law as given to them, correct?
Correct.
And I always liken it to some people as like a recipe, right? It has a definition and certain ingredients that define it on what that particular thing is. And that recipe will have certain parts. And the juror's job is to follow those parts and only those parts. Does that make sense?
Correct.
They can't add to it. Can't say, oh, you know what, to consider convicting somebody of this type of crime, I see what's written on the paper, but I also want them to prove to me beyond a reasonable doubt something else. They can't add to the definition. Does that make sense?
Yes.
The flip side is they can't take away from it. They're like, look, my gut says maybe the person did it, and while the state might not have proven this one part, I'm still going to convict. That's taken away from the definition. Do you understand that?
Yes.
All right. Sometimes law enforcement can be frustrated at things in the system. Do you agree with me?
I do.
Okay. And so is there anything about your connections to law enforcement that's going to make it so that you kind of take that definition and maybe take away a part?
No.
Anything about that contact with law enforcement that's going to go, you know what, I'm not going to really hold the state to its burden. I'm going to go with my gut.
No.
All right. Now, and you understand that as Ms. Vallow Daybell sits there, she's not guilty. The state hasn't proven a thing, right?
Correct.
Okay. You've heard zero evidence.
Correct.
All right. Now, you have a relationship to somebody in the Canyon County Sheriff's Department. We don't need to get specific, but did I read that correctly?
You're correct.
Okay. One of the witnesses in this case, Doug Hart, was a special agent in charge of sort of this region of the FBI office here in Boise. Do you know Doug Hart?
No.
Okay. Doug is recently retired from the FBI and is now like chief deputy in Canyon County. Did you know that?
I did not.
Okay. Is there anything about the fact that it is very likely you will hear from now Chief Deputy Doug Hart that would make it so that you would make it give him a leg up?
No, and again, I don't know him. And if I could elaborate just a little bit.
Absolutely.
Canyon County Sheriff since July of 2022, so it's been, it's been 10 months, and he's in post right now. So.
Okay, just making sure we have to ask,
Yep.
right? And sometimes with those connections in law enforcement means that maybe criminal cases aren't for them, and that's fair, and that we have to follow up on those questions. Okay.
I'm fine with it.
All right. Now, following up on that, though, you understand under the law, and I'm hoping everybody is with me listening as well, that jurors have to evaluate the credibility of people on the stand, and they can consider their occupations, but they can't automatically believe somebody because of the type of job, and they can't automatically disbelieve somebody because of their job. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Is there anything about your contacts through your family that make it so that you're automatically going to believe the word of a police officer?
No.
Okay. Is there anything about those contacts making that you're automatically disbelieving the word of a police officer?
Correct. I won't. Yeah,
Okay.
I am open either way.
Okay. Judge the person, not the uniform, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Juror 1392. Okay. I think I see you. I'm sorry, I'm pretty short, so I'll try. I have a quick question. I was looking at your questionnaire, and on there I had some questions about some of your comments on burden of proof. And I understand that the questionnaires were kind of in a vacuum, but it was our way to speed through some concepts, because I'm pretty confident that people wouldn't want to be here and have us ask you each one of those for a week and a half, right? So asking about the questionnaire and your comments on burden of proof, did you hear the instruction given to you by the court?
Yes.
Okay. And you heard the court talk to you about the concept of beyond a reasonable doubt, right?
Yes.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Okay. And and you understand that means jurors have to be convinced, use their reason and common sense to believe that the state has proven every part of the crime.
Yes.
Okay. Now, some people will say that they need some sort of mathematical certainty, or they need all doubt removed. All right?
Yes.
Okay. So understanding that the instruction the court gave you didn't say that, and in light of your comments about wanting a higher burden of proof, can you recognize that jurors may not be able to have all doubt removed?
Yes.
Right. Is there anything about the court's instruction that gives you pause or concern?
No.
Are you going to want every possible doubt removed?
Yes.
Okay. Why? Tell me about that.
Gotta have a clear, level-minded.
What does that mean? I just want to make sure there's no assumptions in here. I
Yeah.
want to make sure I'm understanding.
So pretty much treat it like work. You leave everything at the door. You don't come in here with personal reasons, thoughts, nothing. You leave it all at the door, etc.
Okay.
Home is home, work is work.
Okay, absolutely. And so considering, remember, we talked a bit about the state has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt each part of the definitions you're going to receive from the court, right?
Yes.
Okay. And in reading those definitions from the court, you have to hold the state to its burden. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Is there something about the case that means that even if you are firmly convinced of each part of the definition, that you're going to want more, or you're going to want all doubt removed?
Yes.
Okay. Why?
Your Honor, the court will instruct the jurors about what beyond a reasonable doubt means.
I do agree on that. I do want to inquire of this juror, though. The court did previously read this instruction, and I'll read it again because it is defined and it's what will be provided in the case now and later. And it says, a reasonable doubt is not a mere possible or imaginary doubt. It is a doubt based on reason and common sense. It may arise from a careful and impartial consideration of all the evidence or from lack of evidence. So that's the definition of a reasonable doubt. Would you have any difficulty following that standard or level if that's the instruction you're provided? No. Okay, you can continue with your voir dire then.
Thank you. Did everyone hear that conversation with juror 1392? Yes. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it a lot. All those reds went up. Is there anybody have concerns about that conversation, or was anyone confused? Because we can certainly ask the court to read the instruction again. All right. Can everyone commit to following the law and holding the state to its burden of proof?
Yes.
All right. Juror 955. Okay. Do I have it correctly that you interned at the Ada County Coroner's Office?
Yes.
Okay. You're going to hear testimony from some forensic pathologist. What was the nature of your internship?
I wanted to study forensic pathology, so when I was going to Boise State, I got an internship there, and I believe it was about 5 to 6 months.
Okay. And did you end up going to med school? I apologize, I didn't make that note. Did you end up going to med school?
I did not.
Okay. And so were you able to observe autopsies and stuff?
Yes, I was able to perform autopsies.
Okay. And in your work there, how long ago was this?
More than 10 years ago. This was in 2011 or 12, I believe.
Okay, I just want to make sure because some of the autopsies in this case were performed here. Let me follow up on that a little bit. You're also going to hear testimony from the medical examiner from Ada County and a couple other forensic pathologists. Do you know did any of the names on the list look familiar to you?
No.
Okay. Now, given that you've had some exposure to the concepts of forensic pathology, and you've had clearly, part of the process of determining cause of death, like how somebody died, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then sort of that next step of what manner of death it is, like what does the law call it, right?
Yes.
Okay. And when we say manner of death, we're talking about like died at the hands of another, right?
Yes.
Or natural death.
Yes.
Or suicide, etc.
Yes.
Okay. And so you've had a chance to kind of look at both of those issues firsthand, like how did somebody die, what caused their heart to stop beating and their brain start functioning, right?
Yes.
Okay. Could you consider convicting somebody of homicide or conspiracy to commit murder if the state could only prove to you the manner of death, that somebody died at the hands of the other, but couldn't exactly show you the cause of death?
Yes.
Okay. Help me understand why do you say that? You were very definitive.
Yes. I think and granted my experience and knowledge was a long time ago and was not over a long course of period of time. I did learn a lot. I've forgotten a lot also. But I believe, yes, I believe if a forensic pathologist had stated how someone died that it was by the hands of another, but could not say how, that I could understand that.
Okay. All right. And you could consider convicting somebody if the state proved to you each part beyond a reasonable doubt. They could prove the person died at the hands of another, just maybe not what it was that actually killed them.
Yes.
Okay. I saw a couple of people look down, and I don't know whether it's because it's late in the afternoon or because that line of questioning confused them, but I am going to ask Juror 589. It may just be you were stretching, but I saw you look down during the line of questioning, which are 955. Was there anything about that conversation that troubled you?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Those benches can get hard. Is there anybody else who had a reaction to that particular question? Everybody can commit to considering a case, even if the state couldn't. I see a card going.
I was saying yes.
You're saying yes. Excellent. Excellent. No, you got ahead of me, and that's what we like. That moves things along. So everybody can consider convicting somebody of the crime of murder, even if the state can't prove exactly how the person died.
Yes.
Okay. I don't see any. Everybody's cards went up. Thank you. Juror 184. I'm sorry, 1148. I clearly need more coffee. Yes, ma'am. Do you have any concerns if you were to hear testimony from a witness whose religious beliefs were different than your own, and you found it maybe strange or even extreme? Would that automatically be a disqualifier to you?
No.
Why not?
I mean, I grew up, my mom kind of preaching, don't, put all your eggs in one basket, definitely open up and kind of view everything with an open mind. So I feel that if someone has a different religious background or religious belief than me, I don't feel I could, discriminate against anything. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, certainly you can consider sort of point of view and logic, but is somebody having a different religious belief than yours, or even one that you consider extreme, not an automatic disqualifier, to use your words, right?
Right.
Okay. Is there anybody who feels that way? Like, look, if the religious belief is something that I just don't believe in, my faith is such that I just can't consider their testimony. Okay. Is that your 1672? Yes, sir. Can you talk to me about that?
There are some faiths and religions that are fundamentally opposed to mine, and I would have a difficult time trusting someone who claimed to be of one that was in a faith that was fundamentally opposed to my own.
Okay. Without getting too far into the facts,
let's pass on that topic.
Okay.
And we can do individual voir dire with that juror on that.
Fair enough. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Okay. And just for record's sake, Is there anyone else who has the same reaction? And of course, we'll do what the judge says and do individual voir dire. Is there anybody else who kind of has those same feelings? Okay. Thank you for your candor, Juror 1672. One moment. I'm trying to get to the questionnaire, Judge. I'm sorry. Juror 131. Just kind of reviewing a couple of things on my notes. Is there anything about your personal experience or your personal background that makes it so that you couldn't sit and evaluate evidence against Ms. Vallow Daybell neutrally and fairly?
Are you asking if I have an issue with any of that? I'm sorry.
Is there anything about your personal background or personal life experiences that make it so that you can't sit and evaluate the evidence against Ms. Vallow Daybell with an open mind?
No.
Okay. You understand, we all bring to it our life experiences, right? And of course, that often shapes how we see things. Do you agree with me?
Yes.
Okay. And the question that both parties, because it really is about being fair to both sides, both parties need to know if there's something that means in this particular case, you can't give both parties the fair shot they need. Is there anything about that?
No.
Okay. All right. Juror 1069. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks. Thanks. Ma'am, I see you were a previous juror?
Yes.
Okay. Without getting into definitions of the law or any of that, that's the judge's job. You understand that a criminal jury trial has different jury instructions based on the facts and circumstances given?
Yes.
Okay. And if the jury instructions you receive in this case are different than what you got before, or even the evidence is different or the process is different, is there anything about your prior jury service that's going to affect your ability to listen to this case?
No.
Okay. You know, you can't do the compare and contrast, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you can assure us that any previous experiences are kind of put in the back, put away?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. 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 Thank you, Your Honor. That's all from the state. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you, counsel. Before we move on to defense voir dire, could I have a brief sidebar with counsel? Okay, we're back on the record. I just consulted briefly with counsel. I did receive some information in reviewing the questionnaire of juror number 411. There's a personal relationship there which could present a implied or actual bias in the case with some courthouse staff or personnel here. So based on those relationships, we are excusing juror 411 for cause. So juror 411, thank you so much for coming today and for your jury service. As I mentioned to others, you can talk about the case. Please respect others' feelings that you served within the jury here if you want to do that, and if someone persists in talking to you and you don't want to, please report that to the court. And with that, thank you very much for your time. All right, let's have the defense conduct their voir dire at this time.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I remain seated?
You may.
I don't mean to offend you by remaining seated. Sometimes when I stand up, my voice doesn't carry to the microphone, and then you can't hear me. So just some follow-up. I've listened to the questions asked by the judge and the prosecutors, and so have you, and so I'm not going to ask the same questions. I'll just follow up on a few. When we talk about bias, that's not an insult to you. It just means under law that sometimes jurors shouldn't serve on our juries for specific reasons. They can come back and serve on another case, but not this one in particular. And so during this process, that's what we're trying to do is because of the pretrial publicity in this case, we're screening a lot of jurors based upon what you know. And I don't want to ask you that now, what you know, because I don't want to poison the well, so to speak. So that's what we're going to be doing individually, having you come in and tell us what you heard about the case before you came in to fill out your questionnaire last week. By a show of your red cards, how many of you had heard about this case before last week? So most yeses, a few no's. Okay. All right, thank you. There's also a challenge that can be made, what's called a hardship, meaning that there's something going on in your life at work or at home that would prevent you from being here for 8 weeks. So in looking at questionnaires, we want to ask questions about hardship. Juror number 1672. You indicated on your questionnaire that it may be a hardship for you to serve here for 2 months due to work.
That's correct.
And does that still apply?
Yes.
So if you were to serve here, would you be worried about your ability to provide for yourself or your family?
I would not be worried about providing for myself or my family.
And so what would be the hardship?
It puts a significant amount of pressure on my coworkers being gone. I am our team lead, and one of the escalation points for when things are difficult to solve or fix. If I'm gone, that role doesn't get easily filled.
All right. Your Honor, due to that situation, I'd ask that Juror 1672 be excused for hardship.
All right, what's the response from the state?
Your Honor, I think there were other matters we were going to do individual voir dire on. I think the answers alone before the court, maybe not, but maybe we could include that in the individual voir dire.
All right, I'll take the challenge under advisement on 1672, and we can discuss that in more detail in individual voir dire along with other questions.
Juror number 157. You indicate on your questionnaire that you work for the Air Force or the Air National Guard,
Yes, sir.
and that serving for 2 months here may pose a hardship on you.
It could for the workplace, yes, sir.
And so, Your Honor, I would ask to excuse Juror 157 for hardship.
Does the state have a response?
Your Honor, may I ask a couple questions, or do you want to do
Yes.
that?
You
Okay.
can do some follow-up for Dyer on that.
Okay, thank you. Juror 157, I understand you said for the workplace. Could you help us understand what that means a little bit more?
I work in a work center, and I'm probably the most knowledgeable person currently available. So I have other coworkers, but generally I know the most in my work center.
Okay. And the court has explained that he intends to have court from 8:30 to 3:30 every day.
Yes.
And he's been very clear with the parties. We're going to stick to that schedule, and we're going to move it along and be done at that time.
Yes.
All right. So what are your work hours?
Normally I work 0700 to 16:30 every day.
16. Okay. So there would be some time after court for you to be able to answer questions and give some guidance to your colleagues, right?
Yes, ma'am, I agree.
Okay. And how many people are employed at your company?
In my shop, there are 4 people.
Okay. And so have you talked to your supervisor or the manager about this?
Yes.
Okay. And what did they tell you?
They were very understanding of this process. I'm here and been responsive to it, but I think everybody was hoping I wouldn't be a long-term part of it.
Yeah. I suspect probably most of the people sitting on the bench feel that way.
Yes, ma'am.
But you understand that, and I thank you for following up with your employer. So, Your Honor, the state doesn't believe we've rise to the level of extreme hardship.
All right, let me just ask another inquiry there. In terms of your compensation, would that change if you were required to serve as a juror here?
Can you define compensation, sir?
Would you still receive the same amount or rate of pay if you were serving on a jury versus not?
Yes, I am active guard reserve, so yes, I'm on a salary.
Okay. At this time, I will deny the challenge for hardship as to this particular juror, and we will still have some individual voir dire, and I may allow the parties to explore a little more on that in individual voir dire as well.
I'm going to follow up more with Juror 157 as well.
Okay, so 157 is, do you still have the microphone? Okay.
So you were talking military time when you talked about your work hours.
Yes.
So in non-military time, what do you mean?
Oh, I work from 7 o'clock in the morning until 4:30 every day.
And so if court goes past 3:30, even though that's our hope that we get done at 3:30, sometimes we will go to 4 or 4:30. Would that interfere with your ability to get to work that day?
I can do work from home, and to be completely honest, I work a lot of off hours anyway.
And how far away is work or home?
I work at Gowan Field, which is on the other side of the flight line at the Boise Airport.
And how long does it take to get from here to there?
During traffic, probably about 20 to 25 minutes max. In the early morning, usually about 15.
So if we start court at 8:30, would you be able to go to work before court?
I probably would, yes.
Would you want to, or would they excuse you?
I would probably choose to, just because I would like to get certain things accomplished there.
And then if we get done with court at 4 o'clock, even though our goal is 3:30, as you've found out, we don't always hit our timelines here. So would that affect your ability to get to work before 4:30?
No, I generally have tendency to make it work. I'm a logistics planner. It's kind of what I do.
Well, I'll give you one more shot to try to get out of jury.
Oh, okay.
And you're really trying to stay.
I just make things work. It's generally what I do. But yes, I understand what you're saying.
You want to do your duty to your country by serving as a juror, and we respect that.
Mhm.
But I'm trying to let you have an out to say, yeah, I really got to be to work.
My job is important. I am a superintendent of a section, and I don't think I need to talk news to anybody around here, and generally we're getting pretty busy right now.
So if you were given an option, stay or go, do you want to stay or go?
I would probably choose to go.
And I'll renew my challenge to Juror 157 that hardship is present for her case to let her go.
All right. As to the challenge, the standard is not whether someone wants to stay or go. The question is whether it would create a serious hardship that would prevent you from rendering fair and impartial service. And if you're trying to do some work at the same time, the next part of that question is whether or not you would be distracted because of work obligations, and that would make it so you couldn't give your full undivided attention to this case during trial. So in light of that clarification, do you believe you would suffer a undue serious hardship if you were required to serve here?
Yes.
Okay, I appreciate your honesty. I will sustain the challenge with that answer. I know this juror has made an effort and thought through that, and I respect your commitment. So Juror 157, I do find, based on her current employment situation, would suffer a undue hardship based on the length of time this trial may take. So you can be excused with the thanks of the court and the parties. All right, when you're ready, Mr. Archibald, you can continue your voir dire.
A lot of my other questions, Your Honor, go to pretrial publicity. I'll let, if I can have Mr. Thomas continue his questioning on hardship.
Very well.
Juror number 589, you have expressed some concern about picking up your grandson, is that correct?
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about your day and what that's going to involve if you have to serve for the next 2 months on this jury.
My daughter works in Nampa in the public school district, and so I am responsible for picking my grandson up after school. He is finished at 2:15 every day. And initially I thought my husband would be able to take care of that. He works from home, but right now he's got his company that he works for is being sold, and he's the CFO, and so he has massive amounts of work going on right now, and he's very hesitant to commit to being able to do that for me. So that's...
And so you pick him up at 2:15, you said?
Correct.
So which means that you would have to leave here. How far is it from here to the school?
It's in Meridian.
So it's
I
a
don't know.
drive.
Yes.
Okay. And so that's on a daily basis?
Correct. Every day but Friday.
Okay. Your Honor, I would challenge this juror for cause based on a hardship. It looks like she is the person who deals with her grandson.
All right, response from the state.
A few questions, Judge, just
Yes.
understand. So understanding your husband, it's a hectic time for him. Are there times he could help you out?
He could some of the days. It's just, I can't commit that he could every day for 2 months.
Understood. And if you were sick, who would pick your grandson up?
My husband.
Okay. If he wasn't available, who would pick your grandson up?
Good question.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, so there's no backup to you.
Not really.
How old is he?
11.
Okay. Is he in after-school programs at all?
1 day a week he stays for a chess club.
Okay. And what time does chess club get out?
3 o'clock.
Okay. So is there no one else and there's just no way to get coverage for you?
I have been thinking of that. I suppose occasionally, I suppose I could find someone. We have a friend whose children go to the same school, and so I could see if she could, when she's picking up her children, pick up my grandson.
Okay. Understanding it's a hardship for almost everybody, and that's why we're
Yes.
asking. Absolutely. I'm not trying to pry, but
No, I know.
you understand why we got to ask, right?
Absolutely.
And so you could ask, are there other carpools is it a private school?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Are there other parent carpools at the school?
Not that I know of.
Could your daughter ask? And could you let the court know?
I could work on it for sure.
Okay.
And see what I could come up with.
That would be great. Have you done any inquiry prior to today on that?
No, I have not.
Okay. Thanks, but you're willing to at least explore it and let us know.
Absolutely, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. This state at this time objects to a strike. And will you do it? I think I might have just asked, are you willing to? Will you ask?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, I think it's premature to say there's a hardship.
All right, I have a follow-up question or two for Juror 589.
Yes, sir.
The question I guess I would have is if some arrangements could be made, do you believe that the situation where you're providing that assistance for your grandchild, would that become a distraction that perhaps would make you not be able to give undivided attention in this case if we were going long someday, or if the schedule changed for some reason in this trial? Do you think that would pull away from your ability to totally focus while you were here?
No, sir, not if I knew it was covered and I didn't have to worry about, oh my gosh, who's going to get him. Then no.
Okay. I appreciate your comments. As to this juror as well, I'm going to take that challenge of hardship under advisement and pending some further questioning on individual voir dire.
Okay. Let's turn to juror number 955. Juror 955, I believe in your questionnaire you indicated that there may be a work hardship. Is that right?
Yes, but after listening to everything that everybody said in here,
I know,
I can
right?
take that back.
Okay. So what kind of hardship do you have? I mean, you have to support yourself, obviously. Everybody does, right?
Yes.
You can't miss out on 2 months' worth of pay, right?
Yes. Well, I technically work for myself and I'm on salary, so.
Okay. What does that mean? You work for yourself and you're on salary.
My fiance and I have a business together.
Okay. And so are there any other employees other than you and your fiance?
Yes, there are 2 more.
Okay. But you're kind of the boss?
I run operations and marketing.
I can see that. You're the boss. So, would the company, I mean, would there be some jeopardy of the company, folding or falling apart if you weren't there?
To be completely honest, no.
You're not that important?
I mean, no, it wouldn't fall apart without me.
Okay, all right. Okay, I guess I don't have any other questions for you. I do have questions for 1122, but I think that we'll take those up on individual voir dire. It doesn't have anything to do with media. It just has to do with some of your personal experiences. Juror number 1148. I noted also in your questionnaire that you had some issues with hardship for work. Is that correct?
Yeah, slightly. I guess I'm just concerned about being paid. I've never done anything like this or been called to anything like this, so I guess I'm not entirely sure how my company would compensate for me or if I'm able to go back to work after like being here, you know.
Okay. And that's completely understandable. I mean, if I were in your shoes and somebody were to ask me, hey, would you mind taking 2 months off without pay, that would be a serious issue.
Right.
I don't think anybody is that independently wealthy unless they're retired and have some sort of pension or some sort of other income. Do you have any other income other than just work?
No, I'm just, 21 in an apartment trying to make it, you know.
Yeah. And are you salaried or are you hourly employee?
I'm hourly.
Okay. And have you explored the option of asking your employer about the possibility of paying for you to not work for 2 months?
I can definitely, bring it up to them. They're aware that, I've been summoned, and they are aware of how long the trial might be. But then again, I've only been with the company since December of last year, so I have not been with them for that long. They won't fire me, but I'm not entirely sure about them being able to pay me, but I can definitely talk to them about it.
And what about are you on probation at all? Is there a probationary period with this company?
Not that they've mentioned to me. They seem to like me.
Okay. And what is it that you do for the company?
I'm just front desk reception. I work at a beauty school, so I just do appointments and things like that.
And are you the main receptionist?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm just kind of one of their new people still.
Okay. All right. I'm going to challenge for cause, Your Honor. I believe 1148 has established the fact that she doesn't have any other income, that there is a distinct possibility of her not being able to work for 2 months. It would be a super hard thing for her to have to come in for 2 months and only get paid what a juror, their daily pay, I'm not even sure what it is. I think it's $10 a day. And I just don't think it's realistic to ask her to come in, especially given the fact that we have so many jurors to pick from.
All right, what's the response from the state?
I want to ask a couple questions, if I may, Judge.
Yes.
Okay. Have you asked your employer if you're going to get paid?
I have not.
Okay. Are you willing to do that, and will you do that?
Absolutely.
That issue I have there is we don't have time for people to go check now. We have to know at this time whether. So it's a good idea, but we simply don't have time to select jurors and have them come back at a later time to say now they've talked to their employer. So I'm just pointing out these decisions need to be made with what's on the record for the court. So in light of that, if you want to ask any additional follow-up, you can.
Nope. In light of the court's ruling, I will stop. Thanks.
Okay. And just to be clear then, that's what you know as of today, correct?
Right.
All right. I appreciate that. So at this time, the court will overrule the for-cause challenge. I think it's speculative to say whether pay would or would not be lost, and the juror indicated in the questionnaire that they'd be able to do this and haven't indicated a serious hardship at this point, but that can be discussed again in additional individual voir dire. All right, Mr. Thomas, you can continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to go back to 955. You indicated that you were at the Ada County Coroner's Office. You did an internship with them, is that correct?
Yes.
And you said you were there for about 6 months?
Yes.
And I, unfortunately, have done quite a few murder trials and have gone through this process with lots of people that have worked at the Ada County Coroner's Office. How many do you remember that you were involved in their autopsies? More than 10?
Yes, I was involved with more than 10. I don't know that I recall more than 10, but I definitely did more than 10, yes.
Okay. More than 20?
I don't know. I would say between 10 and 20 is probably
That's good.
the best of my recollection.
So during the autopsies, they generally have the interns like either hold stuff or take photographs or those kinds of things. What was your job, so to speak, during those autopsies?
Yeah, I did not do either of those things. I was actually performing the autopsies.
I'm sorry? You were actually examining the bodies and weighing things, moving things around?
Yes.
As an intern?
Yes.
Okay. Which doctors did you work for?
I actually don't recall any names. There was one person that I remembered his name for years, and then I couldn't tell you honestly. If I saw it somewhere maybe, but I can't tell you off the top of my head anybody's name.
So when you say you actually were involved in the autopsies, what exactly did you do?
I mean, I don't want to be too graphic, but
as graphic as you can, because I really need to know.
And let's do that in individual voir dire. I do think that's appropriate to do individually and not in the panel here.
Okay, Judge. Let me see. I guess I'll be done with you for now. There will be other questions.
Sure.
How many folks here have seen a car accident? Has everybody seen a car accident? Okay. The prosecutor said, and I'm just going to quote the prosecutor. She said, "Hearing things and seeing things sometimes trigger things in our minds." And so when I say how many of us have seen a car accident, it's something you can't unsee, right? Am I right? So basically, we're going to move into another area where we're going to individually talk to you. And there are some things that we're going to ask you with regards to media exposure and those kinds of things. And we want you to know that we want you to be, as the state has said, brutally honest. But we also want you to understand that sometimes you may have seen something a year ago, 6 months ago, a year and a half ago, and you don't really remember all the details, but sometimes when there's a witness that's on the stand and they're testifying, things may come up in recall. You understand that? You realize that? Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So when we're individually voir diring you, we want you to keep that in mind, that there may be some things that you may not recall today, but that it may affect your service on the jury later on. And so we want you to keep that in mind as we individually voir dire. But other than that, Judge, I am done, and I would like to ask for individual voir dire at this point.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Counsel, I want to have a brief discussion with you off the record, and also I think it would be a good time to just allow for a break for everyone before we get into individual voir dire. So at this time we will excuse the jurors and then most likely bring them back on an individual basis after this. So all please rise.
Come this way, please.
Okay, we're back on the record on CR 22-21-1624. At this time, we took a mid-afternoon break and have been looking back through questionnaires, and the court understands there's been some stipulated challenges based on the group voir dire to certain jurors. I'll go through the list I have and confirm that it is what the state and defense have agreed on. I'll do it numerically again. So juror number 486 can be excused. Was that for a bias or hardship excuse?
Hardship with the federal summons.
Okay, does the defense agree?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, we'll bring them in to be excused, juror number 955. And what was the rationale on that?
Bias.
Okay. Does the defense agree on excusing 955?
Yes.
Juror 1148, what's the reason on that one?
Hardship.
Okay, and does the defense agree that 1148 can be excused for hardship?
Yes.
Juror number 1392. What was the reason?
Your Honor, I apologize. Bias.
Okay. And does the defense agree also 1392 can be excused for cause?
Yes.
Okay, juror 1551.
Bias.
Does the defense agree on 1551?
Yes.
Juror 1672. Is that a hardship?
That's a bias, Your Honor.
It's all bias. Okay. For bias. So if I could have the bailiffs bring those 6 jurors in, we will go ahead and excuse them and then start up with our individual voir dire.
All right, please. Smallest number first.
All right, thank you. Please be seated. All right, we've got a group of 6 jurors we've asked to return to the courtroom. The court went through on the record additional review of your questionnaires and responses provided during the group voir dire and have agreed that a challenge should be sustained, and the court's agreed with each of those also. So as I call your number, if you'll just hold your card up to make sure we've got the right people here. Juror number 486. Juror number 486 will be excused based on a hardship. Juror number 955. Juror 955 is excused for a possible bias. Juror number 1148. Juror number 1148 is excused based on a hardship. Juror 1392. Juror number 1392 is excused based on a possible bias. And juror 1551. Okay, we just did that one. Sorry, that one's out on a bias also. Juror 1672. And juror 1672 will be excused also based on a challenge for bias. So I want to indicate when I say bias, we're not saying you've done anything wrong. Some people knew too much about the case. Some people expressed things in the questionnaires that just made us determine that it would be best if you weren't on this jury, since the law requires very strictly that we have a totally impartial jury that has no prior knowledge of the case. Others of you have expressed some form of hardship. So the court is thankful for your service, as are the parties. Thank you for the time you took to come in and fill out these questionnaires. And you can be dismissed at this time with the admonishment I gave other jurors that please respect the privacy and feelings of fellow jurors if you wish to discuss this case, and if somebody persists in talking to you and you don't want to discuss it, then please report that to the court. So with that, thank you for your service again, and you can all be excused. All right, we'll next start off with juror 1639 for individual voir dire. All right, thank you for returning juror number 1639. This is the time we're going to conduct individual voir dire, so we'll be able to ask you questions outside the presence of your fellow jurors. I just have a couple of questions for you as we get started, and then I'll allow the attorneys to be conducting their questions as well. So the first question I would have is, before you reported for your jury service in this case, were you aware at all of what this defendant was charged with, either here or anywhere else?
Yes.
What was the specific knowledge you had about that? If you can tell me in as much detail as possible about charges.
I knew that she was charged with murder. It's nearly impossible to have not heard about the case in some form, and so I was aware that she was charged with murder of 2 children, and but I don't know a whole lot about it other than that.
Okay, thank you for that response. The next question I'll ask is, in hearing about the case, have you ever watched any programs that focused on this, such as a Dateline or a 2020 special or any kind of documentary or made-for-TV movie or anything like that?
I have not.
Very well. That will conclude the questions I had for this juror. If the state would like to inquire, you may.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
A couple quick questions. Where do you think you heard about it? What was the source of the information?
On TV, I suppose, just news, general news, I suppose.
Okay. When you say general news, do you watch local or national or both?
I typically don't watch anything necessarily. It's just in passing, flipping through channels, that sort of thing, I guess.
Okay. Do you have a typical channel you watch?
I don't. I really don't watch much TV.
Okay. Did it ever come up in any social, do you have social media?
I'm pretty much abstained from that.
Okay. So any social media feeds, anything, Google searches, YouTube?
I mean, I look at Google News, and there may have been some headlines and things like that on there, but I don't have any accounts on any social media or anything like that.
Okay. Now, you understand this is really, I mean, it really is simply about, do we have people who, if they heard of something or think they saw something, can they put that out of their head and judge the situation based on the evidence presented in this courtroom?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Because we can't sort of challenge what's in your head, can we?
No, I agree.
Okay. Is there anything about your exposure to this situation that would make it so that you couldn't put it aside?
No.
Is there anything about that, what you might have heard or, might come to you that you're going to hold against Ms. Vallow Daybell?
No.
What about the people of Idaho? Prosecutors.
In what respect?
Anything about it that you'd hold against them?
No.
Okay. The state has nothing further. The state would pass this
All
juror.
right. Thank you, Ms. Smith. Mr. Archibald or Thomas?
So, juror number 1639, can you tell us the details, what you remember about this case?
I know that the children were missing and that they were searching for them for some time, and that they were found at some point, and I don't remember exactly where, and that then she was accused of their demise, I guess. I don't know a ton, but I do know some stuff.
And the manner in which the news was presented to you, did you think, oh, that's nothing, or oh, that's pretty bad?
I honestly don't remember a whole lot, but I mean, anytime that someone's found deceased and buried, I guess I think that's not great. It's not normal, but I am not aware of too many details around that.
And so when you were summoned for jury duty, did you have an idea it was for this case?
I had heard that that was coming up for selection, so I thought there was a possibility, yes.
So how long ago did you get your jury summons?
Like a month ago, I think.
Okay. And so that month that you had to think, oh, that case is coming up at the same time as my jury summons, did that go through your mind?
I don't recall at that time. I just know at the very least leading, within a week or something before actually appearing here that was a possibility. I don't remember a month ago, though.
And did you talk to friends or family about that you received a jury summons?
I mean, at work, they're aware that I had a jury summons that I needed to appear last Monday. My girlfriend, maybe a couple of friends, I guess, but not a whole lot.
What did your girlfriend say to you about this case?
We really don't discuss it, but I don't recall her sharing anything specifically with me.
How about your friends at work? Did they say anything to you about this case?
Honestly, it's been difficult in the past week since appearing here, because some people kind of put two and two together and do kind of say things. I have not engaged in any contact relating to this whatsoever. I've abided by the rules, and I have not led on to anything that I know what case I'm here for or anything like that. But yes, people have tried to talk to me about that.
And when they try to talk to you about that, are their comments in a positive light or are they negative?
I wouldn't necessarily say positive or negative, just trying to get out of me what exactly I'm here for, I guess.
And so since you filled out your questionnaire last week, your work associate, you've talked to your work associates and your girlfriend that this is the case that we were wondering about.
I have not said that to anybody, no.
But they have said that to you?
Yes.
And how do you respond to that?
I just say that I can't comment on it.
Have they tried to influence what you know or don't know about the case?
I wouldn't say that, no.
Do they... so in your state of mind, you're the only one who knows that. And you know that me as her lawyer, I want to make sure we have jurors that can be fair and impartial, and that we want jurors that will give my client a clean slate when we start out. So this part about the prosecutors say brutal honesty, I just need you to be brutally honest. Are you that juror who can give my client her fair day in court?
Yes, I believe so. I take this seriously. It's my civic duty, so I'm I can be fair and impartial.
And that's all we can ask of you is will you let your friends at work or your girlfriend influence you from here on out?
I will not.
Your Honor, I'm going to pass Juror 1639 for cause.
All right. Does the state as well?
Yes, Your Honor.
Very well. Juror 1639, you will get some more specific instructions about reporting, but you'll need to be here tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. I think you need to be here before 9. We're going to start at 9, and you'll be here before then whenever they tell you need to get here. All right, thank you. Before you leave, I'll just admonish you again, please follow the rules as you've continued to do without discussing the case about any facts of the case or doing any kind of investigation to learn about it between now and when you come back tomorrow. Thank you. Let's next bring in Juror 131. Counsel, as we go through these jurors, is there any objection to me just admonishing them and telling them to come back tomorrow, or do you want to all have them brought in as a group when we're done?
That's fine with
Okay.
the state judge.
Now that we know the time, I think that'll be a little more efficient. So we'll do that with each one that is passed for cause. They'll be allowed to leave, or else they'll be excused for cause. So we'll just do that individually until we get there. Thank you for. All right, juror number 131 has returned for individual voir dire questioning. You have been called back because you do have some prior knowledge of this case, and so we just want to discuss that with you outside of the presence of the other jurors. I have a couple of questions for you, and then I'll let the attorneys inquire. The question I would have for starters is, before you reported for your jury duty last week in this case, were you aware at all of what the defendant here was charged with, either here or anywhere else?
To be honest, that was loud. To be honest, I really don't know what the charge was. I didn't really pay attention to that. The only pieces I know is of the search that they had for her. Okay.
Did you ever watch any news-related programs or dramatizations that dealt with this case, like a 2020 or a Dateline or a documentary on Netflix or a made-for-TV movie or anything like that?
No, I don't watch those stations, and I did not watch the Netflix show that's out there.
Okay, thanks for your responses. That concludes the court's voir dire of Juror 131. I'll let the state question at this time.
Good afternoon. Just following up, if anything you might have heard, where did you hear it?
On KTVB.
Okay.
I think I got that right.
Okay.
Channel 7.
Okay, Channel 7. Did you watch it on the television or streaming, or did you look at it through Facebook, or both, or all?
It was either, I can't remember the year, but my husband and I were watching the news, and that was one of the stories that had popped up.
Okay. Did you follow it?
No, actually, especially in 2020, I decided to take care of my own well-being, and so I eliminated a lot of news media and things like that.
Okay. Are you on Facebook?
No, I am not, proudly.
Okay. All right. Do you have any social media accounts?
The only social media I have is Instagram for my work, and I do Snapchat with my nieces and nephews.
Okay. And did you see any of the items pop up on your Instagram or anything, any of the stories?
No.
Okay. You understand that this case really is about jurors who can evaluate the evidence without some sort of filter or outside influence.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Do you have any doubts or questions about your ability to do that?
No.
Okay. You can give Ms. Vallow Daybell a fair trial?
Definitely.
All right. The state will pass this to our judge.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Mr. Thomas, I believe. Oh, sorry, Mr. Archibald, you can inquire.
So juror 131, before you came to fill out your questionnaire last week, what could you tell us about this case?
The only thing I can remember is the fact they were searching for Miss Vallow, and I only know they found him in Hawaii. I don't know why they were there. I just know that she was there.
Anything about that caused you to think, wow, this is bad?
It was concerning, but again, I didn't know enough about it, so I couldn't pass any judgment because I'm the type of person who loves to hear the facts before I pass any judgment on anything.
So the judge has told you that all people who come to court are presumed innocent. But based upon what you have heard and what you have seen, do you presume my client to be innocent?
I cannot say that she's innocent, but I can't say she's guilty either because I don't know enough of the facts or the situation that's going on. So until I know those things, then I can pass my opinion. But at this time, I cannot tell you if I believe she is or not.
So the fact that you haven't heard any evidence yet, what would that tell you? Is she innocent or guilty, or you don't know?
My whole life, I've always felt like people are innocent until proven guilty. So at this time, in my opinion, she's innocent until I'm proven that she's guilty.
Okay. So based upon what you know, you're not going to presume that she's guilty and make her prove her innocence?
No, that wouldn't be fair. In my position, I wouldn't want that to happen to me either.
Okay. And so the judge will give you an instruction on that that the Constitution gives her, my client, a presumption of innocence. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. No, knowing your state of mind, you're the only one who knows that. So the reason we're spending so much time going through this is we just need to be really careful because of all the publicity. Can you assure my client that you will be fair to her?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. I passed juror 131 for cause.
Very well. Does the state pass juror 131 for cause also?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. So juror 131, you will be able to leave now. You'll need to check in with the jury commissioner, I think, before you go for your instructions as to when you'll be reporting tomorrow morning. I do know we are starting our proceedings at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, so I'm assuming it's sometime before then you need to be here at the courthouse. In the time between now and then, please continue to abide by the court's instruction to not review anything about the case, look the case up, discuss the case with anyone, or do anything else to potentially taint your impartiality. You'll be required to sign that juror affirmation indicating you've done that when you return in the morning. And with that, you can be excused, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll next bring in juror number 232 failed to appear, right? Juror 370. All right, good afternoon. Juror number 370, we've had you return for some additional individual voir dire questioning. The court's reviewed the questionnaire, and I do not have any questions at this time for juror 370. Does the state have individual voir dire?
Briefly, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Do you use Google at all?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a Google feed or a news feed?
Not news, no.
And is there a Google feed? Like things that pop up on your Google home screen?
Oh, no.
Okay. Do you use YouTube?
Yes.
Okay. So like sometimes they have recommended videos that that's what I mean. Like when Google pops up, they call that a news feed sometimes, and it pops up things they want you to click, right? You ever seen that with either Google or YouTube? Okay. And so, have you ever seen anything on your Google News feed from your YouTube feed from local news stations?
No, ma'am.
So you've never had any news articles pop up on anything?
They pop up, but I don't watch any kind of local news.
Okay. No, yeah, absolutely. So my question is, I know that's what I'm asking is, does it pop up?
I would assume so.
Okay.
But I've never paid attention to it.
Okay. Anything national news or anything?
Probably.
Okay. And so had you ever, do you have Netflix?
Yes.
Okay. And do you have, like Netflix will have suggested videos and stuff, right?
For shows and things, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And for different features and stuff. Did any ever suggested videos pop up on this case, even if you didn't click on it?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Do you follow? Are you a Twitter person?
No.
Okay. So, do you do Facebook?
Yes. But
Okay.
I'm rarely on it.
Okay. What sort of things are in your Facebook feed?
Just friends.
Okay.
I keep it clean of everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, sometimes it pops in things, but you never have any articles of interest or any videos they recommend or anything?
Other than my groups, which is pretty much just theology, and that's it.
Okay. And so, and I believe we chatted briefly about your views on religion and witness credibility, or did I not ask you?
That wasn't me specifically, ma'am.
Okay. So talking about that, we have some, if you heard testimony from witnesses with different religious ideas from your own, how do you think you would analyze that?
Based on what they said, according to the evidence. I mean, everyone has their own biases, but I can't let their personal worldview affect that in the way that I'm thinking and analyzing.
Okay. Because I noted you had some religious studies in your background.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Specifically, what were those religious studies?
Christian counseling and biblical studies, history, Old Testament, ancient languages.
Okay. Ancient languages like Aramaic.
Yeah.
Okay. Koine Greek, ancient Hebrew.
Some of it, yeah.
Okay. My brother had his PhD in ancient languages. So, did you ever follow any in the biblical languages? So understanding that, did you have, if you were here, discussion of those topics in somebody's testimony or religious belief? Would you draw on your own knowledge to compare its accuracy?
For the accuracy of those specific statements, I'd have to think about that.
Right.
Because I've learned certain things, and maybe they'd studied under a different perspective.
And so, absolutely, that's why I'm asking, having had a brother who was into that very deeply. And so, if you were to hear about someone, talking about interpretations of tablets or reading sacred scripts, or sacred passages or literature, would you, in your head, be thinking about some of the things that you know from your personal experience?
Doubtless.
Okay.
Absolutely, it would come to mind because it's a subject that I've learned about myself.
Right. And people who are interested in that are really interested, and I get it. So you understand, though, that in doing that, neither side could get in your head and see what you were comparing, could they?
Yes, that's
Right.
correct.
Okay. And so I think at this point, Judge, the state's going to move for cause on Juror 370.
What's the response from the defense?
I got just a second, Judge. Your Honor, we will not object to him being stricken for cause.
All right, based on the non-objection, then the court will sustain the challenge, and Juror 370, you'll be excused from your jury service at this time. I thank you very much for your time you've committed thus far and for coming back today. I'll ask you to please respect the feelings of your fellow jurors if you choose to talk about the case, and if you don't want to talk about it and someone insists on talking, please report that to the court. Thank you.
Thank you.
Juror 486. Sorry, that was excused. Juror 586.
Did we do 411? Did he get excused?
586.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. Thank you, Your Honor.
We're going to also have to take a break at 5 o'clock if we're not done, because there's an issue with the viewing location here in Ada County. So I'm hoping we can get there by 5, but if not, we'll have to take a recess and some time to keep going. All right, Juror 586, thank you for returning. We have some questions for you as to the individual voir dire here. Let me just ask you, before you reported for your jury service last week in this case, were you familiar at all with any of the charges that had been filed against the defendant, either here or anywhere else?
No.
Okay. And I know there was an issue you reported previously in regards to your juror affirmation, not wanting to sign it because you thought maybe you had gone against one of the admonishments there. Would you just please briefly explain here on the record what occurred that made you think you shouldn't sign the admonishment?
I was trying to find out how full the jury was. I'm supposed to be on a flight tomorrow morning, and I was just trying to decide if I needed to reschedule it in time to get my money back or if I was going to be waiting till the last second. So I was trying to calculate when my juror number would come. I thought it would come on Monday. And then, so I really quickly scanned the article that said, like, jury almost picked was the headline. So it said there was something like 39 out of 42. And I went, okay, great. Sounds like I'll make my flight. Like, if they've seated jury, so I haven't canceled it yet. So I'm just waiting to find out what I have to do.
Okay. Well, I understand life goes on and you got things that are planned. And so I very much appreciate your honesty in reporting that to the court. We've determined you could still return for additional questioning here. I don't have further questions for this juror at this particular time, but I'll let the state inquire.
Ma'am, if you reschedule your flights and you're not able to go on your trip, is there anything about that is going to cause you to hold that against the defendant?
No.
Okay. What about being frustrated that the state is asking you to be here?
I'm going to be disappointed and frustrated, but that's life. And I'm in a position that I can reschedule it, so it's nothing negative. It's
Okay.
my family.
Nothing about it that would affect your evaluation of the case in the state's burden of proof?
No.
Okay. The state.
Does the defense have any questions?
I do, Judge. So you're indicating that you know nothing about this case?
No.
You didn't know anything about it prior to your jury service?
No.
Okay. And when you got your jury summons, nobody said, oh, wow, that's probably on the Vallow case?
My husband said, I hope you don't get that case, but it didn't mean anything to me when he said it because I didn't know what the case was.
You didn't go look it up?
No.
And he didn't tell you what it was?
No.
Okay. And so then you said you went to Google yesterday to look to see where the numbers were?
I was just trying to figure out if I was going to have to serve or not, just based on the numbers. I mean, I was like doing the math on the number of jury, like the range that was called for today. I think it was like 127. And I thought, okay, well, if you only need a couple more, I'm further along. Like, if you just keep that interval, I thought maybe I would get called on Monday, and then I could just change my flight and come back Sunday instead of Tuesday. So I was just
Was that
trying to
after?
play the odds.
I apologize.
Sorry.
Was that after you were informed by the jury commissioner that you were going to come in today?
No, I checked at 5 o'clock when I saw the reporting numbers for today, and then I thought I was going to still get to go just based on my calculations, but then I got the email at 6:30 saying I needed to come in.
Okay. So how was it that you were checking the numbers yesterday?
I just looked at the reporting instructions where it gives the range, and it says what badge numbers are supposed to come in, and there was a range of 127. So I just thought you went in numerical order, and I would take 127 today, 127 on Friday. My number would fall on Monday.
Where did you get that information from?
On the jury reporting page.
Okay, because we don't get all that stuff. So
Oh,
that's
sorry.
why I'm kind of confused as to where you got this information.
Yeah, it says check at 5 o'clock to see if your number's called. So.
Okay, so you didn't do any searches on the internet about it?
No, I did Google to see if it was almost full. Like I was hoping you were seating a jury and I could still go, but so.
And so how did you? What did you type in? You're not in trouble.
No,
That's
I
the
understand.
thing. Nobody really.
On the jury page, it gives the names. So I just said jury duty or jury duties, seat selection, and the name. And one of the first headlines that came up said something about jury almost selected. So I scanned for numbers to see if it was close and hoped that I mistakenly thought you only needed 3 more people based on what the number said, and I thought, okay, maybe I can still make my flight. So.
And so that was on the Ada County page?
No, that was just Google. That was just some news article that popped up, and that was the
Oh, so
headline.
you scanned the news article for...
Yeah, it was one of the first things that came up in the Google
Mr.
results.
Thomas, I'm sorry. You have got to stop talking while she's not finished her question yet. It's just...
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, so you go on to Google, an article comes up, you scan the article, reading some of it, obviously.
Yes.
Okay. And so at some point you figure out, oh, they only have so many and not enough.
Yeah, I thought you only needed a couple more people, and I was 300 numbers away, and I thought, surely they can get 3 people out of that 300.
So did you learn anything from the article other than we were looking for a jury?
No.
Okay.
I was only looking for numbers.
Do you travel to Las Vegas biweekly?
I do. I go every other Tuesday for a client meeting.
Okay. And that would be a hardship for you, right?
I alternate with the owner of the company, and I guess he could just go in my stead on those weeks. Or every Tuesday. He goes we alternate every other Tuesday, so he would have to go every Tuesday, I guess.
Okay. So for the next 2 months, he would have to go every week?
He would. Or he would have to cancel the client meeting or do it remotely.
Okay. Your Honor, based on the totality of the circumstances, based on the fact that she had gone onto the internet, based on the fact that she does have a hardship for work, I would ask to exclude her for cause.
Response from the state?
Judge, I understand that lots of complications, but this juror has indicated nothing that would suggest she can't do her jury duty and nothing to suggest an implied bias. In fact, she's been exceptionally forthcoming and diligent.
All right. I appreciate the responses there from both sides. I am going to sustain the objection of the defense based primarily on the fact of the length of this trial, the fact that jurors have to avoid temptation of any kind of researching and the admonishment the court gave, and where that has occurred, I do have a concern. Also, there has been an expressed hardship as it relates to the flights you're concerned about tomorrow, as well as your travel for work. So for those reasons, I'm going to grant the challenge, and juror 586 will be excused for cause. So thank you very much for your honesty, and thank you for reporting today. Juror number 589. All right, thank you for returning, juror number 589. You've been brought back for individual voir dire as it relates to a concern we've already discussed a couple of times today about a potential hardship here. I don't have any further questions on that issue. If the state would like to conduct individual voir dire of this juror, you may.
Thank you. Ma'am, looking at your questionnaire, I see that your daughter, does she work in an elementary school?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Does she work in a different elementary school than your grandson?
Yes, she works in a school in Nampa. My grandson is in a private school in Meridian.
Okay. And that's why I was trying to figure out whether, and so it is still possible for you to ask if somebody could, your husband could take a break and go get your grandson.
So, yes. So my grandson's school is about 25 minutes from our house. So it's, a big break. And then we bring him to our house and because he gets off quite a bit earlier than my daughter does.
Okay.
And so he stays with us from after school until probably 4:30-ish.
Okay. But your husband works from home?
Correct.
Okay. And then, if I may just scroll down real quick. Just following up for just prior to coming in for jury duty, what had you heard of, if anything, about this case?
Absolutely nothing.
Okay. And I just know, I was looking at your questionnaire and I couldn't decide. You said, describe the case briefly, 7 counts. I don't want to assume. Where'd you get that information?
From the judge.
Okay, that's what I thought, but you know what happens when one assumes? It's not a good thing.
True.
Do you get any local media? Do you follow the local TV station?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Okay. Are you on Facebook?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, any questions from the defense?
Between the time that you were here earlier, 20 minutes, half an hour ago, and now, did you contact anyone to see if they could maybe help you out as far as picking up your grandson?
I did not because unfortunately I left my phone in my car.
Okay.
But I have been pondering it and thinking about what I could possibly do.
Okay. Your Honor, based on that and the fact that we have to make the decision right now, I would ask to renew my challenge for cause based on a hardship that juror number 589 would not be able to focus in and be able to do this job that she would have to do on a daily basis.
All right, let me have a few questions on that to follow up with my own then. So juror 589, you said you have been thinking it over and pondering it. Did you come up with any possible solutions you think could alleviate the situation if you were required to serve in this case?
Well, so yes, not. Yeah, I will say I probably can cover it. It's not that I have a specific solution in mind, but I think I have a couple of people that I could call on and get them to at least pitch in when my husband couldn't go.
Okay,
But that's not a definite.
I do appreciate your responses there. Obviously, for nearly anyone, being required to serve on a trial of this length is disruptive and difficult. The question the court has to determine is whether or not it rises to the level of a undue hardship, which would prevent a juror from being fair and impartial in the case, and otherwise this juror has indicated across the board they would be fair and impartial in the case and do not have prior knowledge of the case, which has been pretty difficult to come across in this case, as you may have guessed with the number of people we've been talking to. And so I hope you don't think I'm minimizing the situation, but
Absolutely
I am going
not.
to overrule that challenge and find that for juror 589, she can be included amongst the jurors that will be part of our peremptory challenges for tomorrow. So with juror 589, I'll advise you that you will need to report back tomorrow morning. They'll advise you of precisely what time that is, and we'll be starting at 9 o'clock for these peremptory challenges, and so shortly after that you'll know whether or not you're in fact included among trial jurors. Between now and then, please, I guess, look into what you can in that situation with your grandchild, and more importantly, do not do any kind of investigation in the case or talk to anyone about the case, and follow that admonishment. And with that, we will talk to another juror here in a moment, so we'll see you tomorrow.
Your Honor, did you need to take a break at 5? You indicated something about that.
I got a new note that says we can go to 5:30. Before we bring in our next juror, though, and that will be juror number 591, I want to indicate on the record that by the count I have at this point, I believe there are enough jurors to go in for peremptory challenges. I think we've arrived at 42 jurors. We've discussed the idea the court proposed out of an abundance of caution to have a few backup jurors, so when they do report tomorrow, in case we do have any fails to appear or people that don't sign the affirmation, we can go in for peremptories with an entire panel large enough to exercise all those peremptories. So from the state, is that the count you have at 42 at this point? And if so, do you agree that we should continue and get a few more jurors here this afternoon?
Yes and yes.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Smith. Mr. Archibald, Mr. Thomas?
Yes, Your Honor, we agree with that.
Okay, I appreciate that. So we will continue to see if we can get a few more what we'll call backup jurors for reporting tomorrow and have juror 591 brought back in.
We can ask.
All right, Juror 591, thank you for returning. We have some individual questions for you at this time. In your questionnaire, you did indicate some knowledge of this case through some pretrial exposure to media or news coverage. So I have a few questions for you, and then the attorneys will as well. Did you know before you reported for jury service that the defendant had been charged in this case, and what did you know about any charges that had been filed?
I did not. I don't watch the news. I don't watch TV. I just stream movies, so I did not know anything was going on, actually. I do know that the only thing that I knew was that they had caught her in Hawaii, and that was like the last thing that I had heard.
Okay. Did you ever watch any programs that focused on the case, like a Netflix documentary or a 2020 or Dateline or anything?
I have not. I heard there was a documentary, though, but I haven't watched it.
Okay. That would conclude the court's voir dire. If the state would like to inquire, you may.
Oh, I'm sorry, Judge, I didn't hear that part. I apologize. Good evening.
Hi.
Hi. You'd heard that something about people getting caught in Hawaii. What do you think the source of that data point is?
Do you mean like how did I hear about it?
Yep. How'd you hear about it?
Any news that I ever look at is usually through like my email, like Yahoo email, and I'll click on an article.
Right.
But I don't have cable TV to be able to watch the news, and I don't watch cable TV. So usually it's generally any articles that I might see that are on Facebook or through my email.
Okay. And so on your Facebook feed, well, let's just break it down. You have a Facebook account, right? Do you follow any of the local news stations on their fan page or their news page?
I do not.
Okay. Do any of those, you know how the ads come up or the things come up in your feed? Do you ever have any of the local news stations pop up in your feed?
Infrequently, I think.
Okay.
And usually if it does pop up, it's usually I look at the weather.
Okay.
Praying for some sun.
Got it. And so have you ever clicked on any of the stories about this situation?
I honestly can tell you that I don't remember ever clicking on anything that's on Facebook. It's usually probably through my Yahoo email that I would click on something.
Okay. And what is it you remember of the sort of Hawaii connection?
I just remember hearing about the case and at one point that her children had disappeared and that they were that they didn't know, what am I trying to say? For a period of time, they didn't arrest her, and then they arrested her in Hawaii, I guess. That's from what I remember.
Okay.
But there was a period of time between her children disappearing and the time she got arrested in Hawaii.
Okay. All right. Anything at all about if the kids were found or where the kids were found?
I actually don't know any information about that.
Okay. Is there anything about what you remember or kind of what's floating in the back of your mind that you think is going to affect your ability to look at evidence in this case?
I do not think so. I think I'm very neutral. I don't know very much information. I haven't been in Idaho for very long. So I feel like I have very limited information that I feel I would be very neutral about this case.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. The state has nothing further. Thank you for your candor, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right. Does the defense have any questions?
We have a few questions. It looks like you are a teacher.
Yes.
You teach high school?
I do.
What classes?
I teach photography.
Photography, okay. And are you the only photography teacher at the high school?
There's two of us.
Two of you. And so if you're not there, the other teacher would be there to take care of all that?
She's a new teacher, so I've actually been mentoring her, but I think this late in the year, she has a firm grasp on the curriculum, and I also feel like my students do as well. So I think they're very independent at this point. So I do feel that she would be able to help out.
Okay. And as far as taking time off for 8 weeks or so, Would that be a problem for you?
No, it wouldn't. The only thing that I did put on my application is that I am a single mom. And if something happened, I were to be sequestered, that's the only issue that I think I would probably have. Is to, because I'm a single mom and being able to get my kid and whatnot.
Right.
If something were to happen where it wasn't, the sticking to the schedule 3:30, but otherwise, my kid's a teenager. She can transport herself, to and from school.
There would possibly be an issue if there were a verdict of guilty that you would have to deliberate, and those deliberations would most likely go beyond 2:30 or 3:30 in the afternoon. They generally make it go quite long. Would that be a problem for you?
I don't think so. I do have some family in town that will be able to help me out.
Okay. All right, I have no further questions.
All right, then does the state pass this juror for cause?
Yes, Your Honor, the state does.
Does the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, juror number 591. Having been passed for cause, he'll come back tomorrow morning for what are called peremptory challenges, and then we'll figure out tomorrow who remains as trial jurors. So you'll need to report here in the morning, sometime before 9 o'clock. They'll tell you specifically when you leave. When you leave, please do not do anything to further investigate the case, look into the case, do any research, talk to anyone about the case, or anything else that you'll be required to respond to when you return to fill out that affirmation. And we will see you tomorrow.
All right. Thanks, Your Honor.
Juror 684 would be next. All right, juror 684, I know it's been a long afternoon. Thank you for returning for individual voir dire. We've got a few questions just based on responses in your questionnaire. The first question I would have for you is whether or not you knew what this defendant had been charged with before you reported for your jury service last week.
I wasn't real sure.
Okay, did you have any idea or have heard anywhere about she had been charged with something here or anywhere else?
Yeah, before coming here, yes.
What did you hear?
Just little bits on the news. I can't specifically remember. Honestly, I didn't really pay attention.
Okay. Have you ever watched any programs that were dedicated to this case, like a 2020 special or Dateline or a Netflix documentary? Okay. That concludes my questions for this juror. If the state has voir dire, you can do so.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good evening.
Hi.
Looking at your questionnaire, I just wanted to ask you some questions. You said you'd heard a little bit about the news. Lots of people watch different things on the news. So what is your news? Is it local? Is it national? Is it Facebook?
I don't watch a lot of local news, and I can't remember. Honestly, what I did see was probably a few years ago.
Okay.
And I don't really remember exactly what it was all about.
Okay. What do you remember seeing? What do you remember?
I remember the defendant, and that I remember there was some children involved, and I remember the name of Chad. And that's all I remember.
Okay. Any other names?
Not that I can remember. I might, if I heard the names, they might come back to me, but I can't recall that.
Okay. Well, that is a great and candid answer, because that's exactly why we're asking, because both sides need to make sure that if you're sitting there and something comes back to you, that you're going to push it aside and not consider it. Do you think you can do that?
Yes.
Okay. Because we can't confront or deal with what's only in your head, right?
Right.
All right. And so people who have had exposure, things may come back to them, and we need to know you're going to ruthlessly go put that away and put it in a box.
Yes.
Okay. And you're not going to compare and contrast to what you might remember or you think you heard to what you're hearing in the courtroom.
Right.
Okay. Do you have, are you on Facebook, or are you on Twitter or
Facebook?
Facebook. Do you have a Facebook news feed?
No.
Okay. Do you follow the local TV stations on Facebook? No. Okay. Do you ever?
Well, yes, actually, CBS 2 on Facebook.
CBS what?
CBS. I think it's just the CBS news feed on Facebook.
Okay.
No, it's not on Facebook. It's just a separate news feed.
Gotcha. How do you get to that news feed? Is it on their app?
It's an app.
Oh, the CBS app. Okay.
Yes.
Have you ever seen any stories about this situation on that app?
The stories are there every day, and I haven't, since I've come here, I haven't looked at them.
Okay. And the stories on this case, are they there every day?
Since you started in here with the case?
I probably wasn't a great question. I'm sorry. On your Facebook app, are there stories or headlines about this case?
On the CBS app?
Yes, sir.
Not the Facebook app, but on the CBS app.
Yes, sir.
There are stories. Every time I open my phone and I look at that app, there are stories.
Okay. Are any of those stories about Ms. Vallow Daybell?
They are, but I don't look at them.
Okay.
I just sweep past them.
Okay. Anything about those headlines that catch your eye or bother you?
Bother me?
Yeah, bother you.
The whole thing bothers me.
Okay. What does that mean?
The whole story is, from what I've heard, it's depressing and sordid.
Okay. And so you've explained the whole story. What does that mean to you?
I just know so little about it.
Fair enough. The fact that the story is depressing, is that going to affect your ability to be fair and impartial to Ms. Vallow Daybell?
No.
Okay. Anything about those headlines, that news feed, that you're going to be thinking of when you're evaluating the evidence in this case?
No.
Can you assure the judge and both sides that you're going to be able to keep anything out of your mind?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir. The state will pass this, sure.
All right. From the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. You indicate that the whole story is just upsetting, depressing, and sad. And what we're trying to do is just find out what you know. And so when you say, well, the whole story is just depressing and sad and hard to deal with, we just kind of want to know what that means to you, because we know a lot, and we don't know what you know.
Right.
So if you could just be a little more articulate about what is so depressing about it, what is so sad about it, what is so bothersome.
Sure, I understand, because I say the whole story, but I don't really know
Right.
much. I know it's a murder trial. I know there are children involved. That's disturbing and sad. That's really all I know about it.
Okay. You don't know anything about the kids. You don't know what they look like. You don't know any of that.
I vaguely remember some pictures from way back, but I couldn't. If you put 10 pictures in front of me, I couldn't pick out which one it is.
Right. You indicate that you get the CBS news feed on your phone.
Yes.
And so, like I said earlier, you can't unsee a car accident, and our collective fear is that you get picked to be put on a jury, and then somebody comes up and testifies, and you think, oh, I remember them from that show, or I remember hearing that interview, or I remember hearing, and it doesn't jive with what the testimony is. And so you're taking what you knew earlier that has been jarred in your memory and putting it into what was here today, and you're kind of mashing it up, and so that's our concern. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay. Is that going to be a problem for you?
No.
Okay. The second thing that concerns me, and it may not concern everybody, but it concerns me, we've called hundreds of jurors to be here, and you're only in one of the panels, so to speak. So you're one of 100 that were called in. You may not have seen a lot of the other jurors in other panels, and you're a landlord. Are you a landlord of commercial property or residential property or what?
Residential.
Okay. And how many residential places do you have?
7.
7? Okay. Do you know if there are any of those 7 that may be potential jurors as well in this case?
I don't even know any of my tenants personally.
Oh, okay, okay. If it comes up and you're picked on the jury, would you be confident or would you be comfortable telling the marshal or the judge or somebody, hey, that person's one of my tenants and I have a landlord-tenant, a master-servant type situation with them? Would you feel comfortable doing that?
Yeah, if that happened to come up during the proceedings that I knew somebody.
Right.
Yes.
Not necessarily knowing them, but having them be one of your tenants, because that's one thing that the judge has said. Do you have a relationship? He specifically said with one of us, but I would argue that it would also be a problem if it was one of the fellow jurors, because you would have kind of power over them. You know what I'm saying?
I understand the question. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If that were to happen, I would.
Okay.
Let you all know.
All right. I have no problems with this juror. I would pass him for cause.
All right, juror number 684 has been passed for cause. So juror 684, you'll be required to return tomorrow morning, sometime before 9 o'clock. They'll tell you exactly when as you leave today. Between now and then, please don't do any further investigation into this case at all. Don't click on any of the news feeds that might feature the story. Don't talk to anyone about the case or otherwise learn anything about the case. And then tomorrow we'll be doing our peremptory challenges, so you'll find out whether or not you're a trial juror by tomorrow morning. So thank you for reporting again today, and we will see you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Next have juror 727. All right, thank you for returning, juror 727. I know it's been a long afternoon, so I think we'll be brief here, but we have some questions as relating to responses in your questionnaire. It does indicate you've got some prior knowledge of the facts of this case based on some media or other coverage you viewed before trial. I'll have a few questions and then allow counsel to inquire as well. The first question I would have is, before you reported last week to get your questionnaire, were you ever informed of, or did you know what the defendant had been charged with, either here or anywhere else?
I would be guessing and say, yeah, I would assume that it would be a murder charge for her 2 children.
Okay. Anything else about charges in the case you knew of?
No, that'd be it.
All right. Have you ever watched any programming that was dedicated to this case, like a documentary or a Netflix or Dateline special, or any YouTube channels that went into depth about this case at all?
No.
All right. That concludes the questions I have for this particular juror. Let me actually inquire a little further. You indicated potentially a hardship, too, about some trips you have planned for business. Is that correct?
Well, I wouldn't call them hardships after the story today. I already canceled my D.C. trip this week, and then I've got an Oregon trip to Lake Oswego, but it's all for trade shows, so they're fine. Won't be a hardship at all.
All right. Thank you for that response. I'll allow the state its voir dire at this time.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm going to get to it pretty quickly. I'm reading from your questionnaire, and it's on page 12, which I'm sure you have memorized, right? Okay.
I'm surprised you could read it, to be honest with you.
But it said, what have you heard, or what do you know about the defendant, Lori Vallow, a.k.a. Lori Daybell? And your answer was may have killed or had someone kill her kids while on vacation. And then you said period. There was a period.
Mm-hmm.
And then it says doomsday cult.
Yeah, those are the. Yeah.
Go ahead. Tell me about that.
Those are just the 2 things that I remember from. I mean, I'm not even sure if this is 2, 3, or 3.5 years old, but those are the 2 things that I remember hearing. That she was on vacation when her children were either missing or were found dead, and something about a doomsday cult. But that, I don't know what the cult's called, but that was one of the things that I heard.
What was the source? Where did you hear these things?
Well, 2.5, 3 years ago, I don't know. I would assume the news.
Okay. And do you watch local or national news?
I don't watch any anymore. We cut the cord about 6 months ago, and we just have Philo TV. It's PHILO, so that's just like AMC and FX. It's not the local news channel. So I get most of my news, if I get any, would be off of Yahoo's front page.
Okay. And that often that feed that comes through Yahoo, do you ever see any stories from the local news here?
No, because Idaho Statesman you'd have to subscribe to see their stories. I don't subscribe to their online feed.
What about the local TV stations?
Not that I see.
Okay.
Again, I could see it showing up on a Facebook or something like that, but our instructions when we came in were to avoid all of those.
Okay. And so one of the things that's going to be a concern to both parties is that you'll be sitting there, you'll be listening to the evidence, and something will pop in your head that you might have seen. Can you assure both sides in the court that anything that you might remember or that might trigger something that you can put aside?
Yeah, I would have to walk into this with a blank slate.
Yep.
100%, yes.
Okay. And is there anything about what you might have seen or heard that causes you concern about your ability to give Ms. Vallow Daybell a fair trial?
Nothing that I can think of, no.
Okay. Anything about the people of Idaho giving us a fair trial?
Oh, I moved here 18 years ago for a reason, so I hope they're fair and honest. So, yeah.
Okay.
I don't see a problem with it.
Okay. Thank you. The state will pass this juror, Your Honor.
Thank you. For the defense, individual voir dire.
Thank you, Your Honor, briefly. Going back to page 12, page 11, you indicate doomsday cult, and then page 12 says, what do you know about her, being Ms. Daybell? And you said, I think third marriage, doomsday cult, trip to Hawaii while her kids were missing. So I think her third marriage, what prompts you to say that you thought it was her third marriage?
Her second or third, I just didn't. I remember something about, and again, this is in 2.5, 3 years ago, that the kids weren't the father's kids. If that sounds right, that's just what I remember.
The kids weren't the father's kids?
The person that she was on vacation with, the husband that she was on vacation with.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And then doomsday cult. What do you know about a doomsday cult?
I don't know anything about it. I just remember that was in my head when they asked me those questions. That was somehow brought up in the news or something.
And as you've been thinking about it over the last week or so, I'm sure it's kind of been on your mind, like, oh my gosh, I'm on this case, and this is something I've got to really focus on. Was there anything that prompted more memories about, obviously not the third marriage, but anything about the doomsday cult or anything you might have heard about that?
No, nothing prompted any specific memory or any additional memories, no.
Okay.
I mean, I couldn't even tell you the name of the cult if there was a name associated with it.
Okay. Okay, I'm looking at page 12. It talks about, please explain who you may know, and you indicated that you may know one of the potential jurors that was in your group at the time. Is that right?
Yeah, and I would elaborate. It's now going to be two. Neva, who was here, I used to work with him at Plexus 16 years ago. Just happens to be a small valley. I ran into him in this particular group, and then the day we first got brought in, the group after us that came in, I recognized somebody that came in the group after ours. As we were leaving this courthouse, a new group came in.
Okay.
And he's just an acquaintance. His dad is my neighbor 4 houses down.
But there was someone who you indicated with the just earlier. I'm not allowed to use his name.
Oh, I'm
frankly,
sorry.
I don't even know the names. I know people by numbers now because it's just easier for us. So there was somebody. Were they in the room today?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll just tell you where we sat. So he sat at the very end of this aisle, and I sat at the very end of this aisle. I sat right behind him, but we already said hi to each other in the room before we were all brought in here. And I worked with him 16 years ago. I worked with him and his brother.
Oh, okay. So what was your relationship with him? Let's just get in a little bit. Like, where did you guys work?
Plexus and Cradle Point. He's an engineer, and I'm in purchasing.
Okay. Your Honor, at this point, we would challenge the juror for cause based on bias. The doomsday cult comment, and we believe that he's presuming guilt in this with this particular defendant.
All right. Well, what's the response from the state?
Judge, I think the juror's been very candid and forthcoming that there is no presumption of guilt, and he is told what he remembers to the limited extent he remembers anything, and therefore there's no basis to strike him for cause.
And what we're saying, Your Honor, is that doomsday cult in and of itself presumes guilt.
Well, let me ask a follow-up question. If you had heard that term before for this particular juror 727, you answered in your questionnaire that you would be able to put aside anything you'd previously heard about this case and base any verdict only on the evidence that's admitted here in trial. Is that still the way you feel after having thought further about it with this questioning?
Correct.
All right, I'm going to overrule the challenge on juror 727, and they will return for peremptory challenges. So tomorrow morning, you'll need to report back, and we will exercise those peremptory challenges. You'll find out later in the morning if you'll be a trial juror or not. And in the meantime, please do not do anything to further investigate the case, look into the case, talk to anyone about the case, learn about the case in any way, and we will see you here tomorrow morning. You'll get a few more instructions when you leave from the jury commissioner. So thank you for coming in today.
Thank you.
Counsel, we had anticipated maybe getting 4 what we're calling backup jurors. We're up to 3, and given the time, I'm going to propose that we stop where we're at. Is there any objection to that from the state? And again, we've got 3 extras. The point is getting enough reporting tomorrow in case there's any FTAs, or do you prefer that we keep going with 1 more?
Would the court mind if we try one more? I recognize and I understand the burden we're putting, but we've come this far, and
I think the problem is we're going to have to take a significant break now because of the broadcast we have to accommodate in going into the simulcast location. So it's not just a matter of let's not stay 5 more minutes. I think it's probably going to push us out to 6 o'clock.
I know the state planned on being around, but
Okay. I'm told I guess we can extend that time frame a little more, so let's bring another juror in at this time then, unless the defense has anything to say on that. Okay, well, I was concerned more with our facilities here, but I'm told they've accommodated that, so let's try and move things along, obviously, and we'll bring in next juror number 778. All right, thank you for returning juror number 778. I know it's been a long afternoon for you. We've got a few questions for you based on responses in your questionnaire. You indicated some prior knowledge of this case based on things you had seen in news programming or otherwise before you came in to report for jury service. I'll start with a few questions and then allow the attorneys to question as well. The first question I'll ask you is whether or not you knew what this defendant had been charged with here or anywhere else before you came in to report for jury duty.
No.
Okay, no specific knowledge of charges anywhere?
No.
All right. On watching the news that may have dealt with this case, you did state you thought maybe you had seen a Dateline special. Was that in addition to regular local news coverage you've seen?
Yeah, I think it was like a few years ago, or I heard about it when it first happened. And then there was like a Dateline.
Do you remember watching the Dateline?
I do. I remember having it on, but I wasn't like fully engaged watching it. Like when I watch those kind of things, it's like I'm doing laundry, or it's just kind of a background thing. But I remember hearing it being reported on the news when it first came out, and then like a week or two
And if you can,
later, sorry, there was a Dateline on it, like on a Friday night or something.
okay. I'm concluding my voir dire of this particular juror then, so for the state, if you have any voir dire, you may.
Good evening.
Hey.
Hi. Turning to what you saw in Dateline, can you tell us a little bit about what you remember from the Dateline?
Yeah, it was something about some missing children and a brother and an ex-husband.
Okay.
In Hawaii.
Okay. Just so that I'm clear, what else did you hear about, the brother or the ex-husband?
That the brother had killed the ex-husband in like a dispute or something.
Oh, awesome. I really appreciate your candor.
Yeah.
Judge, understanding now that the state is, I understand where the court has come on previous jurors in similarly situated situations. While the state believes the juror could be fair, if the court is going to do similar rulings, I just draw that to your attention.
All right, I appreciate that, Ms. Smith. Does the defense challenge this juror for cause?
We do, Your Honor, based on her prior knowledge.
All right. Well, Juror 778, I've said this to a lot of people. There's certainly nothing wrong with
Thank you.
watching Dateline and following the news. In this particular case, you know a little bit too much than you need to for being an entirely impartial juror, and just based on that fact, we'll excuse you for what we call bias. So thank you so much for all the time you've committed into your jury service, and you can be excused.
You're welcome.
Juror 849. Oh, FTA'd. Juror number 880. Okay. And did we already take up 955? So we're at 1069. Okay. We'll call in juror 1069. All right, welcome back, Juror 1069. I know it's been a long afternoon for you, so we'll try to be brief here. You did answer in your questionnaire to some of the issues about pretrial coverage of this case, and you do have some knowledge of it, so that's why you're brought back for a few more questions. The question I will start off is whether or not you were ever aware of what the defendant had been charged with here or anywhere else before you reported for jury duty?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen definitely like what's on local news. I wouldn't say I've like seen anything above and beyond just kind of what is presented on the local news, KTVB.
If you can tell me just briefly what is your knowledge of this case, what you think happened here before we got to trial.
I mean, I would like to say that while I have heard some things, I do feel like it's very important to say that I definitely believe like innocent until proven guilty for sure.
I know you wrote that in your questionnaire, and I know you believe that and feel that way.
Okay.
We need to know the details, basically, of what you already know about the case. That's what will make the process fair for the defendant in this case and the state.
Okay.
So,
I would say early on, I have family in Eastern Idaho. We were in Island Park for a family reunion, I think, when this all kind of initially came out. So there was a little bit of chatter then. Just being accused of, I remember seeing just on the news, like, where are your children in Hawaii? That was kind of the, like, beginning of it. And then just that there were, missing children.
okay. And what did you hear about that had happened after that?
That they had likely that they were deceased.
Okay. And did you hear how or where or how?
Not how, no. But then there was obviously like local coverage of them being found. So I was aware of that.
All right. Do you recall where they had been found?
I believe on some property that was associated with the family. I couldn't say whose property, I don't think. It might have been the defendant's property, but it's been a long time since it initially came out. And it wasn't really until kind of the headlines came again with the beginning of the trial that, you know, it kind of came back to like our forefront.
All right, I'll pass at this time for the state to conduct any individual voir dire for this juror.
Ma'am, as we sit here, it kind of seems like as you chat with the judge, like things kind of keep remembering things, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it hasn't been something that, I mean, it's been a long time, you know, so it just kind of was that initial like, wow, this is happening in Idaho, or this, you know, is in the news, and then it kind of goes to a simmer on the back burner, you know, where things come up every once in a while. But other than that, I'm not like researching anything in particular as it relates to any person.
No, absolutely. And so the concern for both sides is that you're going to hear evidence, and as you're sitting there, you'll be like, oh, I heard that before.
Okay.
Right? And neither side can get in your head. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so kind of hearing your exchange with the court, it's kind of felt like the more you talked to him, the more you kind of remembered about what you'd heard or what people had told you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a very like broad overview, you know, so as you start talking about it, you're right. Like, oh yeah, and then this, and then this, and then this, but.
Exactly. I think, Your Honor, just in an abundance of caution, I think the state is going to move for cause on juror 1069.
All right, any objection from the defense?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have talked to a lot of people, and again, nothing wrong with watching the news or following up on current events.
Sure.
In this particular case, we're trying to locate people that haven't had this type of knowledge of the case, so thank you so much for your jury service and your excuse for cause. Let me inquire as to the court administration. Do we need to end? Because I tend to think we should at this point. We have this simulcast going. It requires a big lift from the facilities here. We're now 45 minutes after where we thought we'd be ending, and we did want to get additional jurors. We already have more than enough with 3 extras, and so I'm going to make a determination at this time that we have sufficient jurors to conduct our peremptory challenges tomorrow morning. So we will reconvene at 9 o'clock to conclude with our jury selection and hope that everybody shows back up and we still have a few backups in place. So thanks everyone for your patience in getting here, and we'll adjourn for the day.
Judge, just a quick question. Where do you want us to take our peremptories from? Can we, the whole panel or just the first 42?
We are going to organize them in ascending order, small number to large.
Okay.
And the backups will be the 3 largest numbers.
3 largest numbers. Okay.
And so then if we have any FTAs, we'll fill in with the backups. So that, I believe, still keeps the process random. And I'll put that on the record before we start peremptories that we've used a form of a struck panel system here in a randomized order to make your peremptory strikes. Defense agree with that?
I agree with that. Another question, the 18, you plan to keep 18?
Yes.
And not inform the alternates that they're alternates by lottery at the end?
That's how I intend to do that with the alternates. So 18 jurors sit through all the trial proceedings, and if we lose any, of course, we end up with whatever alternates are removed just before deliberations through a random lottery pick.
Night. You need us here at night, Judge?
Yes. Okay, thanks everyone.